welcome everybody to another day of the LCK 2021 Spring. It is me, Valdez, joined by Wolf once again, and boy, do we have a matchup for you tonight. Gen.G going up against T1, both of these teams looking ridiculously powerful to start off 2021. How are you feeling about this matchup today, Wolf?
I'm feeling very, very excited. It is definitely the bright light in what is a very rainy day here in Seoul. You saw our little screen that we show to show kind of the weather conditions at Lowell Park. We show at the beginning of the show. It's very rainy right now. It's pouring outside, and it's a good day to stay inside and watch top-level League of Legends. As you said, and as you tweeted out just moments ago, this really sets the stage as to who could be on top in this first round robin right now, and who could be the big rivals for Damwon Kia, who are still sitting up at the top right now, obviously still defending world champions. But if Gen.G is able to take this series tonight, they will, at least for the moment, take first place in the standings.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting stage that we have set here. It does feel like three teams are up at the top. Damwon Kia taking that victory over T1 did, kind of say that they are stronger right now, but T1 did look very powerful in that matchup. It did come down to one mistake at the end of Game 3 that gave Damwon the victory. Up until that moment, it was very even. It could have gone either way. And Gen.G have just been looking incredibly clean. They come back with the same roster. They haven't faced off against a really top team just yet, as in T1 or Damwon, but that changes tonight, as we are going to also take a look at the points of the match here. This is the big match of Week 2. No surprise there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big match that everybody's been excited for. And this is the one that's really going to give us a big test for Gen.G. Right now, you look at the eye test, Gen.G looks extremely clean. You look at their stats as well, their strength of schedule, as you mentioned, a little bit easier than T1's route here so far. So no one is looking at this going, well, Gen.G's favored just because they have the better scoreline. People are looking at this thinking Gen.G might take this series because they look really clean right now, as you mentioned. So taking a look at some of our points of the match, you could cut the tension with a knife. Gumayusi Keria will crush them, and Ruler Life saying we'll crush them first. What an incredible bot matchup we are going to have with Gumayusi again stepping in over Teddy. Keria has such an insane support pool. He's been given a lot of what he's wanted to play. He's had great duos with Gumayusi, getting the Thresh with the Aphelios, for example. So something to zoom in on in draft for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to take a look at some of the stats here. Obviously, there have only been 2 games, so it doesn't say too much, but at the same time, you do look at Gen.G's stats. They are incredibly clean. They have the highest KDA right now. But again, T1 had to go up against Damwon Kia. Damwon Kia had to go up against T1. So both of them are kind of going to bleed some stats there, but still on the side of T1, second, first, second, on first turret, first blood, and team goal difference at 20. It's been a good start.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the scoreline does not tell the story of where these teams are at right now.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the first turret percentage, first blood percentage, that's against Hanwha Life Esports and Damwon Kia. So really tough opponents for this roster. Faker, it's already been announced he will be on the in the mid lane here. He's on their starting 5 tonight, but on the other side of things, we still have Gumayusi in the bot lane. Teddy is not back, and LM still coming in here in the jungle. So it looks like we've kind of solidified what the main roster for T1 is going to be for this split. Closer playing more assassin-based champions, but Faker's playing the more safe Azir, looking for more team fights.
Yeah, absolutely. Faker kind of going against the current meta right now with that Azir pick. He's trying to, keep Azir in the meta, if you will, and BDD can play his own Azir, but hasn't been playing much of that just yet. The bottom lane matchup, as we've already said, is incredibly hype. I'm also curious about Rascal up against Kana up in the top lane. I think that Rascal, he's been a little bit of the story for Gen.G. He's been just dominating everybody. Obviously, that first matchup against Doran really setting the tone for himself as well. As we take a look at the Faker versus BDD matchup, always a fun one here, as Faker does have the slight lead by 2 games, but the last 2 matchups have been all BDD.
Exactly, and you can see it's a change of era in terms of mid laners. Obviously, Gen.G making Worlds and going off ahead of T1, so having the more recent results, but Faker has looked very good in his last few matches. Take a look at Gumayusi versus Ruler. in the bot lane here, you know, Ruler is going to have some of the slightly better stats, again, because of the easy matchups that he played. This strength of schedule definitely favoring Gen G in terms of the results, but Gamusi keeping up with a lot of these. In fact, he's very close often, and his damage percent for his team, he's #1 in the league right now. He had a pentakill earlier on as well in that series versus Damwon Kia, so very impressive up-and-coming player right now, you know, rookie starter for T1 now, taking the place of Teddy. Big shoes to fill, but he has already solidified himself as the main bot player this season for T1.
Yeah, I think when you have that kind of performance up against the world champion of 2020, I don't think you're losing your spot anytime soon. Now, there's probably a lot of Teddy fans that might be unhappy with that, but Gumayusi showing up with a pentakill. He loves to play these kind of 200 years, 80 carries, if you will. You know, he's played a couple of games of Phelios, I think 3 games of Samira so far. Also, 1 game of Jin, which he did lose. Yeah. Which we'll get into some of the Jin stats later on today. Ruler, the one player who has had success on that pick so far. He's got a nice little thing wrapped around it. I think it's a happy birthday Ruler blanket.
Yeah, it might be
not 100% sure.
Could be something a fans gave him for one of his you know, anniversaries as well. Because, you know, there are a lot of anniversaries that are kind of ambiguously created for players. 100 games, you know, 100 days since their debut, 1 year since debut, kinds of things. But yeah, it's probably a birthday thing, I imagine. Hard to say at this stage, but
yeah. Well, could be birthday, could be anniversary of debut, of course. As you mentioned, Rascal here on your screen, always looking incredibly focused, and definitely is up there in terms of possible best top laner here in 2020, or 2021 rather. The solo queue rankings have been pretty interesting. We have Mid King, Jug King, and Top King now has copied his mid and jungle with his solo queue ID now. Damwon Kia still ruling the top of the solo queue rankings, but these top laners here obviously still performing very, very well. Kana having an excellent series up against Damwon Kia. I was very impressed by his Camille. Thought it was one of the best performances that we've had in a while, and showing a lot of promise here into another very rough matchup in Rascal.
Yeah, this is going to be a very, very contentious matchup. And as we head into the draft now for this first game, a lot of the top lane matchups have been decided in the later half of the draft. But with how T1 has put so much emphasis on these strong bot lanes, I feel like this draft might look different from some of the drafts we saw earlier this week, just yesterday, and of course the later parts of our first week of the LCK, because you can't allow Gamusi to have the Aphelios. I don't think. You definitely don't want to give him Samira, so Gen G really needs to put the priority on that top lane, and if you don't ban either of them, you could take the other one, but I think if you give T1 that opportunity to draft a strong bot duo, then that's going to be their strong point on this map. And they are blue side here, so they get the first pick of the litter. And with the bans here on Twisted Fate and Talia, T1 will have the opportunity to just pick up Samira first if it's not banned away here, or otherwise the Aphelios.
Yeah, you're mentioning the 80 carry pool. It's definitely a thing. And you take a look here at the Echo ban. Very interesting. The Samira actually getting banned here third by the red side for Gen G. So the Echo ban tells me maybe Faker wants to play Syndra. That would be pretty interesting. But just in general, they do not want to deal with that pick. A Thresh first pick would be pretty interesting. We're not seeing a lot of support first picks here. And Pantheon is going to be the choice. We saw some Pantheons pick that, you know, just made me question, why are you even picking Pantheon? Yeah. But I have confidence that T1 can play this pick well.
It hasn't been very consistent in LCK, and it's been very rare, right? But it's often picked first, and it does sometimes get countered later on in the draft, as we will see Rascal's Camille picked up early and prioritizing the Kai'Sa here. This means that now left open is that Thresh Aphelios duo if they want to go for it, and you have to wonder if this is the right play here. I mean, we already kind of defined that this is going to be the strong point for Gen G, probably Rascal on the top side. Strong point for T1 so far has been their bot lane. The draft does kind of extrapolate that as well. When you see that commitment to the Kai'Sa here, you're already giving away the Aphelios Thresh, but it looks like Gen G have prepared for this. They're expecting this. and they still feel like getting that top priority in an early Camille right before the second ban phase is where they want to go. They're going to take away Faker's Azir as well. No shocker there.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. You know, you mentioned these teams kind of expecting it. The picks have been very quick so far. It's like, okay, they go Pantheon, we know exactly what we're picking. The follow-up, kind of obvious Aphelios Thresh, very quickly snatched up from T1. And now it's going to get pretty interesting. Neither side has picked a mid laner so far, and we see already the Azir taken away. The set is going to be taken away here. They don't want to have life on the set, of course. And now Kennen as well from Kana, so looking to power up Rascal in that Camille role. The first pick in the top side. A lot of pressure on Rascal to perform tonight.
Yeah, a lot of pressure, especially with this draft. The Twisted Fate was banned early, so we'll see if they end up getting some sort of other pick that can rotate around the map towards the Camille. We have sometimes seen the Galio do that. It's a little bit more rare nowadays. And don't forget, too, with that is banned, as I mentioned it, the Pantheon can help match some of these rotations as well with his ultimate once he hits 6. So definitely not going to be, you know, too much pressure on the top lane that isn't unanswered. And that's part of the reason why Pantheon is so strong right now.
Syndra picked up here. They say, well, the Echo is gone. It's a safe pick into the mid lane. They decide to go for the Syndra instead of the Orianna. Syndra seeing a lot of play nowadays and actually a lot of success in the LCK. So going to pick that one up. And let's see what T1 respond here. One pick that is still available is the Gnar. We'll have to wait and see if we do see the Gnar into Camille matchup once again, or if maybe the Pantheon is flexed, but I would have to imagine that they're still looking at a top laner here. Zoe is going to be the pick for Faker as well. So Zoe versus Syndra in the mid lane.
Yep, the Orianna was available, but he's not going to take it. And this is definitely a slower composition as a result. And I like the Gragas here into the Camille. It can be very, very slow. The lane and the matchup can be very safe and slow. He's got good sustain. And what you lose in taking the Zoe over the Orianna and losing that shockwave, you gain in the explosive cask, so you do get some initiation later on for some of those team fights. You've got the Thresh as well, which makes it a lot easier to utilize that. You can even have some great flank angles with the Lantern there. Rel coming in with the Kai'Sa. This is not one of Rel's stronger pairings. Doing a lot better right now with the Samira, but still ends up being a strong pick for the lane, especially into the Thresh here if played correctly. So bot lane matchup again, I think favoring T1. They have the bot lane that they've wanted. They've been given so many times. This is actually going to be, I believe, the third time they get the Aphelios Thresh bot duo. Yeah. So teams just keep prioritizing other parts of the map, and in Genji's case, they want to prioritize the Camille. But this draft doesn't allow a really great chase and a lot of snowballing in the top lane. It's going to be on BDD to crush the lane, to be able to have that priority so Nidalee can rotate top, so he can teleport top. But if he ends up falling behind or Faker gets the better of him, it's going to be very difficult for Genji to get that tempo advantage early on.
I think you're exactly right, Wolf. I think the mid-jungle duos are going to be the focus of this game. I think the bottom side, we have a very competitive matchup, a pretty competitive lane. I think that Aphelios Thresh can get a little bit aggressive onto the Kai'Sa early, but other than that, I have confidence that Ruler should be able to just stabilize and be okay down there. It's going to be up to enabling these aggressive jungles to find opportunities and make them happen. And that's so much pressure onto Element Clit as well as the mid laners. The top side, you know, I think we should just be able to farm it out. You have the cask to get the Camille off of you if she does Hextech ultimatum. And I do really like that pick there for Kana. I think it has a lot more, you know, efficiency, effectiveness in the team fights as we do go later on in the game. So pretty interesting matchup. I feel like we kind of land even in this one. I like the priority that Genji have shown on a couple of the picks, the Camille and the Syndra. We'll see if it works out for them as we do head onto the Rift for Game 1.
Very tense, this game as we head into it between two of the top teams in Korea. Two of the teams that are often the ones that throw the bag at some of the newer prospects in Korea. You see them picking up very, very high solo queue players, teams that are doing well in Academy. Give me usually one of those same prospects. We think about what the league would look like if Teddy was on another team. We'd have another insane bot player on any other team, but he's on the bench because this new rookie in Gumayushi is performing so well right now. And, you know, that's the kind of absorption you get when teams want to be a part of T1 because it's such a famous and well-respected org. Players want to join. They're getting insane offers. And these two teams are kind of both in that vein of getting that talent early and building really, really strong rosters, developing them very quickly.
Yeah, it's very true. Just sucking up a lot of the talents here in Korea. Doing it pretty well. Interesting trade early on. Faker not backing down from moving into the brush. Didn't want to get zoned out on the minions. Knows he has the passive for the extra auto damage, so he's just fine. Gets a nice little push going. Bottom lane, as I mentioned, you know, the extra range here on the Calibrum at level 1 is going to make it a little bit harder for Ruler in the lane to survive. As we take a look at some stats from Gumayushi.
Yeah, end up being number 1 across the board on KDA, CS difference, gold difference at 15, damage difference, experience difference. He is number 1. Again, in a losing series against Damwon Kia, he still manages those stats. In a Game 3 series against Hanwha Life Esports early on as well, against Deft in the bot lane, this is pretty unprecedented. The amount of carrying he has put into these games for T1, how much damage he's done, how consistent he's been. And this keeps happening when he gets the support duo that he wants for Keria. Keria 75% win rate on the Thresh at the moment, and this is the 3rd time in a row that they've been allowed to have this duo with the priority you see on the Camille, for Gen.G with the Kaisa. This is just what's going to happen.
Perfect CSing so far from Gumayushi as well. It's just about as great of a lane as you could hope for this player. Mid lane, it looks like a very early back actually from Faker. Wants to pick up that Dark Seal and teleport right back into the lane at 3 minutes, so not wasting any time with that. Pretty interesting to see. Kana missing 3 CS under the turret. That was a little bit unfortunate. But again, very curious about this jungle matchup.
Yeah.
A level up.
The speed at which Nidalee can zoom around the map and get camps and try to, again, put that extra pressure on the top lane is going to be really strong. But in terms of the ability to stun early on and fight for skirmishes like this one, that's where Pantheon's going to shine.
Oh, insta-cleanse. Ruler not messing around. He knows that he kind of has to give up this early game, and if that means pulling summoners to survive, he will do that. And I like Klid kind of just going the opposite way, looking for the other scuttle. Knew that he could not put much pressure down there on the bottom side.
LM has, you know, silently been one of the stronger jungle players in the LCK so far. And okay, we're going to see a teleport here.
Yeah, Keria has to flash away. The teleport comes in. BDD very trying to get in there. Kana is going to get speared down. Is he tanky enough? The answer is no. He will actually be killed under the turret for first blood. Looks like the lane in its position right now. I think Nidalee shouldn't touch that, actually. Will deny a lot from Kana. As a very nice standard early first blood up in the top side.
Yeah.
As they teleport back in.
And I think it would have been a lot easier to defend if this had happened post-6, but they know that if they do it, you know, post-6 for LM, if they do it beforehand, he's not able to rotate up to save them. And with the early mid-priority that BDD had, you know, just a slight advantage in the lane, he's able to press bottom at the same time. So putting pressure on the map on both top and bottom simultaneously. This Faker, unfortunately, is just kind of set left and mid, grabbing some extra farm, as we're going to see LM steal a little bit of these chickens away.
He does love stealing the chickens.
He does.
Not the first time he's done that. He kind of made Canyon look silly in their first game up against Damwon Kia, getting in his face at the enemy chickens. As it seems like top lane has kind of been restored to its original kind of situation here. There is a ward and he just gets engaged upon.
Yeah, he gets stunned and just too much damage output at the stage. Flash comes through, he's slowed already. See Klid collapse in. Rascal with the follow-up there to get the kill. Kill goes to the Camille, which is exactly what you want. As you can see, he's got a Sheen already. And very much in a great position to become a terrifying side laner, which is the idea here. And if you can funnel some extra gold into Rascal with those early ganks, that's ideal. And this is, again, without, you know, Twisted Fate, without any sort of teleport to the top lane, just a really nice rotation from Klid. Despite the ward, it's just so much damage output, pre-6. Kana doesn't have the cast to escape. You talked about that earlier as one of the reasons why he can be so good against Hextech Ultimatum. He's a very survivable top laner against the Camille, but doesn't work out pre-6 here for him.
Yeah, and take a look at the items. You know, he's building damage already, has the Arcane Comet, so he's going to be looking to fight fire with fire this time around. He's not just going to be the big, chunky Gragas up in the top side. He's going to be looking to one-shot a lot of the squishy members on the side of Gen G. And look at their lineup. Outside of Rel, it's like, well, not feeling good about this one. As maybe going a little bit too far forward. Now he has to try to cast early, but with no flash available. Not sure about face-checking the enemy jungle when you don't know when where the enemy jungle is, and he will get punished for that. Second death here so far.
Yeah, and this is also, you know, the ping came down as well from LM. It was almost like he was reminding everybody, like, no, I did deep ward that. I did have wards over there, but they still just didn't have enough information on Klid. Like, the control ward that's just to the right of the Baron pit perhaps made him feel like he was safe there, but he just simply wasn't. And just a little bit of an overextension there means another kill. Doesn't go to Rascal, spreading the love on the gold a little bit here, but this top matchup is definitely not going his way. And as he is building damage, it's going to get harder and harder to survive as those dives keep coming through.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, if he was just going to build tanky, he would eventually just become so beefy that it would be difficult to dive him. But at this point, when you fall behind on damage, it's like, well, you're not going to be as effective as you want it to be. So we'll have to wait and see where his situation goes. Maybe a bit of nerves, trying to be overconfident with his face checking. But we have this Infernal Drake first, and it is 8 minutes, so I think things are about to get pretty spicy. We have a couple of big objectives on the map. The bottom lane is still getting good priority for the side of T1. Gumayusi getting very farmed up at this point in time. Faker also having a good time in the mid lane. So I'd imagine that T1 should be able to take control of this blue side jungle and take the Infernal Drake, but let's see.
Yeah, they're in a really nice position to do so. Faker wants that blue, and he's got his own actually at the moment. That's going to go to LM. And they have control of this bot lane at the moment. BDD does not have teleport, but they're just not confident that they can make a push to take it at the moment with where... I don't know, with where really the fact that the matter is they don't know where Klid is. He's actually rotating over now. He's actually going to clear this vision. They're going to go for a dive.
Oh, Ruler getting in there to start us off. Engage Kaisa, but here comes the Pantheon, and they immediately turn it onto Life, who goes down without much of a hitch. A very easy turnaround here, and that is why Pantheon has so much power. He wasn't down there. They had no vision on him. And you got to be careful whenever you engage because of that. Kana, what is going on up here?
Yeah, that's not the direction.
Going the wrong way.
Feels like a panic move. It's going to cost him some CS. He will be fine otherwise, though. But that's the power of Pantheon, right? And again, pretty inconsistent. Really bad trade for him here. Really inconsistent in terms of the win rate in the LCK. It's 1 and 2. It's only been played 3 times. Meanwhile, in LPL, he's 13 and 3. So very much a big discrepancy there as we had with our Gnar early on in the season. That started to normalize a little bit across both regions. But yeah, I mean, at this moment in time, you can see how aggressive the Pantheon allows you to be. And how defensive you can be. Like, it's hard to be aggressive against a Pantheon because he will just counter gank. He will just go right into the lane with his ultimate as Ruler is getting chunked out a little bit here.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. And, you know, Gen G, at least they're able to trade objectives here. They had to give up the Infernal Drake, of course, after the counter gank from the Pantheon, but they're able to just rotate up to the top side, pretty easily take down that Rift Herald. But the problem here is that their bottom lane is bleeding so much. I mean, they have 100 CS on the Aphelios, has total control of the lane, and now he's gotten 3 plates. So we're going to take a look at this replay once again.
Yeah, this is, again, looks like a good trade with Klid coming down, but LM is just, he's got the presence of mind to be near the bot lane when this all-in happens. They had just gotten vision of Klid as well, so he just ults in, and that's the extra safety you have with the Pantheon. And this is something that we talked about a lot in terms of the top lane, where obviously it's going to be a tough matchup for Kana. He's going to have to play it slow. He can definitely get abused. He's already 0-2. But the Pantheon works just as well in the bot lane when you do have those aggressive all-ins coming through.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see how this top lane moves along. Because obviously still going the damage here for Kana. He's still going to have that potential in the team fights to just kind of like one combo somebody, but the split push is going to be insanely strong here for Rascal. So it'll be interesting to see as Faker getting in the face of both Clid and BDD. No fear there, as it will be the Scuttle Crab still going the way of Gen.G. Faker not able to oppress the enemy enough in that sense over there, as Carrion, gotta be careful here. Don't want to go too far up by yourself.
Yeah.
Back away.
Right now, Faker, I mean, he's having a pretty good time in lane, so he continues to roam around the river at the stage, and just constantly looking for pressure around that part of the map, even though there are no objectives at the moment. But this can be very annoying to deal with for Clid, because he kind of always has to be around this lane. He's going to try to make up for it now by hiding himself and then pushing in. But you can see by LM's movement here that he knows that he can just go for Krugs here and be very much in ult range to save the bot duo once again, if need be. The timing on this, actually, if they all in, is pretty good for LM once more. Like, he's right where he needs to be. They still don't know.
Okay, they're going to actually engage upon this. They got the teleport coming in, but that is not any kind of forced engage. They're easily able to just flash away. They get the flash away from Gumayusi, but take a look at the map now. I mean, so much damage going to be done to this turret by Faker. He's going to pick up 2 plates, and they don't get anything on the bottom side. They don't even get Pantheon's ultimate
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't even have to ult. And, you know, as Max likes to point out all the time, I love when Jillies get their first turret down in the mid lane, how much that can impact the game, and already significant damage done, 2 plates dead, some extra gold funneled to Faker. They also got BDD's teleport, like BDD used teleport there, so that's a lot of pressure removed in the top side of the map for Kana. He's finished his Night Harvester now, and he's going to feel pretty comfortable up there right now to maybe even start taking some aggressive trades as bot pressure here again going to Gumayusi. Crescendum bursts down the turret, and this just keeps happening. Now they could even potentially lane swap. He could just go to the top lane.
Yeah, I mean, this is, there's so much gold that's just bleeding into the pockets of Gumayusi in this game. 610 more, as the Rift Herald that was taken earlier on, that could have been used to get more of these plates earlier on, maybe even get First Blood turret, but put down later after they go for the failed gank down on the bottom side. They're still going to be able to take down this turret and all of its plates before 14 minutes, so they still have that win condition later on in the game with the crazy strong Camille right now. But with how strong Faker has been in the lane, just slowly getting an advantage over BDD, and of course the bottom lane that we keep talking about, things are still looking pretty good for T1 here in the mid game at least.
And I think if they can control this next Drake fight as well, then they could really start to choke out those objective, you know, moments where you have soul point, right? You have those team fights that you're going to fight on your terms, where Gen.G has to sort of respond, and will have to pull something out of the side lane oftentimes once, you know, if it was even in Drakes right now, if Gen.G was ahead, then they could give up some Drakes and push the side lane and not have Camille involved in some of these upcoming team fights. But because look at the pressure in the mid lane and the control they have over this Drake right now, T1 is going to get this for sure. I don't even think a contest is possible right now. And again, what the Camille offers in side laning, the Gragas is going to have in terms of team fights later on, as he is building damage, he is going to have great engage with his explosive cast. So I'm really liking where we are right now for T1.
Yeah, you know, as long as they can keep the bleed up in the top side to a minimum, and you take a look at the CS, I mean, he's doing just fine, kind of playing passively. Yes, his turret went down, but that's okay. I mean, he's still going to have those teleport engages and just be able to blow one person up, so it'll be interesting to see if T1 can kind of get the engages on their terms, because I think they should 100% win from there.
Yeah.
But it'll be up to Gen.G to try to, you know, use some special tactics, if you will.
Sure.
Try to get Rascal in the side lane, pressure some of those turrets, and get into the head of T1 and try to break down their macro. Otherwise, I mean, it's just turret destruction. One of the things you love talking about, Wolf.
Yep.
Felio's killing turrets, and he's been doing a lot of that here in this game.
He certainly has. I mean, he's extremely good at it with Crescendum, and you know, this mid turret's taken a beating at the stage and time. And I love the special taxes White Raw reference, you know, in the LCK cast. You know, bringing it back to StarCraft 2 for just a second.
We got like 2 or 3 viewers that probably understood that one. I knew that you would, Wolf.
Yeah. Taking the fights on their terms here too, Valdez, for Gen G is going to be difficult without good vision control. They do have really nice initiation. We've been talking about Grog's explosive cask in terms of that versus Camille. But with Rel here, I mean, there are great ways to set up big stuns. Hextech ultimate. Oh. Ooh, scary time. Hextech ultimatum can also, you know, really cut the team in half and isolate somebody. So there are ways to engage and fight this on their terms, especially if they have vision control. But getting back control of this map is going to be the first step.
Yeah, you know, remains to be seen if they can do that, because right now, from ahead in the mid game with 1.5 items, the Zoe Aphelios and, you know, Thresh and all of their pressure in the mid lane is just insane. They have so much poke pressure, there's not really much that Gen G can do to answer it, and so it's just more gold going into the pockets of T1. They're looking to potentially set this up onto Rascal, as the body slam is just barely going to connect. That cask is going to save him a little bit there, though, as Rascal doesn't even have to hook shot away, just walks away from danger.
Yeah. Faker hasn't really, he hasn't secured any kills. He has not been able to use his mid priority to make ganks happen, for example. He's just focused only on pushing mid, which is where Aphelios got that further value, pushing mid later. But his poke damage has just simply removed Gen G's ability to fight, because he's been so accurate with these shots. Not able to hit this one as a caster curse him, but he's been so accurate with his shots, he's been so consistently poking them down before they actually get a chance to try to engage, that the map just continues to belong to T1. Again, down a kill, but everything else, every other aspect of the map is definitely under their control. As we see Clid looking potentially for a flank, is spotted by this ward. Clears it at least.
Yeah, Gen G have been desperately trying to get some vision in the mid side brushes around the river. Just, they don't want to be taken by surprise. Of course, you have many different angles where the Zoe and Thresh especially can just come at you from, and there won't be much you can do if you don't have vision. So that's kind of been #1 priority here in the mid game.
Yeah.
For the side of Gen G, just make sure they don't get caught off guard. No Mountain Soul this time around. Actually goes to the Cloud Soul. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what kind of priority that objective gets.
Yeah, probably not going to be as high for T1. It's a little bit unlucky for them because, you know, they can put a lot of pressure on the Drake control they have right now, and the soul point they're very likely about to obtain. Skamusi's stepping over the line here a little bit. He's gets an amazing trade. Let's look at the life
about this. Yeah, he's got Severing, so it's like, okay, well, nice trade, Ruler. You want to fight again? Flash comes in from Keria. Keep in mind, this is 2v3 right now, but with the Pantheon on the map here, he immediately gets into that back line, and we've got lanterns, we've got flashes. That's what T1 say. Trying to sell everything to Gen G, who do not want to have any of it. Faker maybe going a little bit too far, but eventually does get that kill, and a really fantastic cast comes out from Kana, pushes BDD away, keeps Faker alive, and now Rascal out here all alone. He's got Clid on the right side, but Clid not able to do much at all in this game on the Nidalee so far. Oh, Rascal's still on the run.
He's...
As,
I don't know if this
is just a never-ending chase.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a happy ending here for Rascal, but he is buying a lot of time for his team as the Drake does spawn here. So this puts T1 in perfect position to force that Cloud point. But what a beautiful engage from Keria. I mean, perfect flash engage in, sets up the box. We'll probably get a replay of it later. I'll break it down further because at the moment we're still fighting over this Drake as Keria gets the lantern set up.
Oh boy. Rascal now forced into the fight, trying to turn something onto LM. Not able to get the kill. The exhaust actually a little bit late there, and now Gen G have found a moment to push forward and actually get some poking down. The respawns at 20 minutes into the game are actually quite fast, and they still had teleport available on BDD, so he's able to get into the fight, and in fact this Cloud Drake will go the way of Gen G, so there's a delay at least onto the Cloud Soul and the Elder Drake later on in this game.
All right, let's watch this fight again, because this is actually just an incredible setup. So flash from Keria, he gets the hook, the box is set up here. Life is in such a terrible position. LM's got his ult, so he comes over on the edge. Rascal is unfortunately so late to the party, wants to go in for a flank, but it's just too slow. Faker looking for the double flash over the wall to chase Ruler down, just barely gets him killed. Then has the stopwatch. Kana's there over the wall. shuts down BDD, so Faker lives no matter what. And again, Rascal just completely zoned out of the fight because he was a little bit too late. And this is just a little bit overzealous for T1 to try to hope for this pick on the Rascal because he had his second ultimatum. And LM does escape, and they do push the exhaust in to make sure that that is the case, but definitely an overextension.
Oh boy. And now I don't know what's going on here, but Ruler continuously trying to take these trades, and he's just going to get sniped from way down range as he had that Calibrum set up onto Ruler. Not sure why he's going in there so far behind right now, and now with no AD carry for Gen G, they are going to attempt T1 here to take down the Baron.
And it's such a fast clear time for their squad as well with this Aphelios. And I mean, this is not a fight you can win if you're Gen G.
Yeah, and this is what you can do with the Pantheon. The power of the long-range engage is pretty massive, but Gen G actually navigate that pretty well. They're able to force out the ultimate, they stop the Baron take, and they're able to disengage with actually using 0 summoners to get away there. So a nice little play from Gen G. The engage doesn't work from T1, but again, it's a little bit of desperation, you know, just desperately trying to hold on to this game and not get too far behind.
Yeah, this is going to be a replay of the all-in here from Ruler. I don't know what else to call it. Goes for Killer Instinct, but the Calibrum damage is real. And sorry, man, there's no way out of that one. Sniper rifle equipped. So, yeah, a bit of an overextension there to try to look for a pick. At a moment that was very dangerous to commit to such a fight, right? Especially with the positioning T1 had. Almost cost them a Baron to try for that risky play. And I don't feel like Gen G are behind enough to where you have to look for Killer Instinct snipes at this stage. So perhaps a little bit more passive play out of Ruler would be advised here. But again, T1 controlling all lanes at the moment, and even the side lane that you expect Rascal to be dominating, he has to rotate into it a little bit more slowly. Does grab some vision in the river on his way down, but Kana's able to split push freely, which shouldn't be happening, but the state of the game, you know, there's just no punishing him at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, you know, they just send Kana away from the lane that Rascal is in. Rascal now with no teleport, but he's in such a position that if a fight broke out in the mid lane, he could potentially rotate up there, so actually in a pretty good spot right now. This is going to force Kana back to eat some of those minions that are pushed in, but at the end of the day, we do have, you know, still trying to get control over the red side jungle.
Yeah, and the,
as you do see.
And the Baron pit as well, where they just cleared out vision, and good smite there from Clid to deny that red to Gamusi. That could have been pretty amazing for him to have at this stage. But the lack of teleport makes this so frustrating for Gen G because Rascal really has to respect the fact that they could take Baron. They're actually even going to come over here and look for a blue steal as well. And, you know, you have to be nearby if you're Rascal, because if you're not, then you have that teleport disadvantage for just, you know, quite a while longer. I thought it was even closer to coming up, but it's only halfway back up at the moment. So this is just T1 using the fact that they have a 5 versus 4 fight on command to roam around the map, control vision on the objectives. We're still 60 seconds away now from that next Drake where T1 can force that soul point again, as Gen G just don't have any way to clear out the vision. Or to gain, I mean, they don't have any way to clear out the vision, they don't have any way to gain positional advantage more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a problem, and I think this mid-game is heavily in favor of T1 right now. Aphelios Gumayusi here is just way too large. I mean, the guy he's got 3 items now. He finished his Infinity Edge. You're not going to win a fight against this guy. It's not going to happen unless you get, like, the perfect CC combo. Keiria's not in position to exhaust or to Lantern. Keiria has been so on point this game. I don't think that's going to happen. So really for Gen G, I think you're looking at maybe 3, 4, 5 item Camille to try to put immense pressure on in the very late game, and maybe to wait for Ruler to catch up in this game. Otherwise, it's not looking too good.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I don't even know if we're going to get to that stage either, you know, if this continues. But T1 will have to do more than just simply clear the jungle and wards. They will have to commit to an objective and take that team fight that they've been avoiding so far. Which has, again, limited how much Rascal's effectiveness on the map has been potent, right? It hasn't really been as great. He's only 4 CS up, in fact, at the moment, versus Kana, who's started off with a rough laning phase, but has absolutely, because of the control of mid and the map, been able to really keep things even. So they're just going to push mid right now. Look at the positioning of the rest of Gen G. They're very far away from this turret, so they just get this for free. Now, what do they gain? Not a whole lot. In fact, they're going to keep pushing the issue. Gen G need to respond.
Might as well, right? I mean, this is where they're very strong. And you take a look at the side lane you were talking about, there's not enough pressure being put on by Rascal here. He's getting pushed into his own turret. So actually 0 pressure in here. He's still very massive, as you can see. He nearly one-shots Faker. So that's where a lot of the gold right now for Gen G is. A lot of the catch-up in this game will be in the hands of Rascal. But if Kana's able to push in because they have so much map pressure and the rotations will always be there from LM, from the mid lane, they have a very nice 4-1 setup because of that Pantheon.
Yeah.
And because, of course, of the map control. So it's still rough for Rascal to put on huge amounts of pressure just yet, but that's exactly what they need.
Yeah, and sometimes too, you know, when you get control of the mid lane, when you're grouped up like that, side lane is a problem for Rascal. Sometimes you get a little bit of damage done on a turret, and it's very, very slow, right? And you back away, clear some wards, but that pace is accelerated so much by Aphelios because he clears turrets so quickly. So if you miss out on the mid lane control for just a moment, and he's able to shoot at a turret, suddenly you've lost, you know, your inner turret. Then, you know, next step is if they make another misstep in the mid lane, then he gets the inhibitor turret, and you start to feel like you're really losing control of the map very, very quickly, or losing control of your base, really, because they've lost the map long ago, and they're just trying to wrestle it back. Now a very aggressive rotation here through their jungle, trying to wrap around. That might be too slow.
Look at this, BDD has to flash away from Gumayusi, who is diving a turret with a lantern on his back. There is nothing that the Syndra can do at this point in time.
Meanwhile,
and even under the turret, take a look at this. Trying to deny the turret take from Rascal. Kana down a level on 16. That is pretty important. So Rascal's still able to put on a nice amount of pressure, but at least Kana trying to do his best to buy some time.
Yeah, he did use his ult, Kana did, but it's on a pretty short cooldown, so he'll have that up for the next team fight, very likely. Again, Rascal is backing right now. This is a really, really, really desperate moment for Gen G, because now T1 are going to rotate back towards Baron, it looks like. Actually, it looks like we're going to see Gumayusi go back and buy. Could have been a moment to threaten the Baron take, because Kana was back, maybe try to force out, or Rascal was back, maybe try to force out a teleport, and then disengage from the Baron once again. But, you know, Gumayusi's been doing so much on the map that he does need to go home and buy Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, Runaan's Hurricane. He's got 4 items completed and a stopwatch. So what are you going to do? How are you going to kill this man? As he's, like you mentioned, he almost killed BDD just straight up at range in the top lane, forced out a flash.
Yeah.
362 CS.
That's just insane numbers. I mean, Gumayusi coming in here and he's saying like, hey guys, you know, I might be the best AD carry right now for T1, or am I the best player on the Rift? You know, another question to be asked. We talk about developing talent here on the side of T1. Gumayusi, I'm not going to get too, you know, crazy here just off of one game performance, but he's been looking good, not just in this game.
Yeah.
And
if you talk
very,
about
very
5,
consistent.
Yeah.
Especially with the priority lanes that they're drafting for him. It's been nothing but strength from this young bottom laner who, you know, 4 items at 28 minutes. You know, it's pretty good. It's
pretty good.
You know, not many AD carries can do that.
Yeah. I mean, look at how much faster he was able to get his Kraken Slayer as well early on, which is what led to this explosion of his control over the map, the early turret kill, the plates that went down. And, you know, you say it's only a few games, or it's only, you know, you don't want to say you want to judge it for this game, but it's been 5 games now, fantastically played by him. And in losses even, and against tough teams. I mean, T1 has had one of the hardest strengths of schedule in the LCK so far, and he's still topping so many metrics in the spot lane. And it makes you wonder, if we go back to the draft, did the priority on this Camille really make sense? You know, I was feeling like, okay, once again, if you do this, they're going to take the Aphelios Thresh. And this is the 3rd time T1 are going to have this insane bot duo that is just controlling not only the bot lane and that early lead, but also the map. And a lot of this comes down to Faker having control of mid as well in the Zoe versus Syndra matchup early on. And I feel like this is just something that needs to be targeted. I think that, you know, Gumayusi's got a big hero pool, or champion pool. You know, I'll have it die hard for me on that one, but he's got a big champion pool, but still, I think some of the high tier ones you've got to remove in the draft. I think the priority around a high pick on the Kaisa and just leaving the Aphelios Thresh open is a mistake that Gen G will definitely be thinking about going to Game 2 strat, win or lose here.
Well, Rascal is gigantic. So this is what I was talking about. You're going to have the Pantheon that comes in and helps, but even then, you know, 2v1, this Rascal is eventually going to get so out of control that you cannot do anything against it. And here we go.
Here.
By the way, yeah, LM doesn't have teleport. He's the jungle, so he's not in position for the Baron. He has to try to help out. The inhibitor, very importantly, doesn't go down, actually. Rascal is going to miss the kill. Maybe, hopefully, the minions can get that for him. Yeah, and the minions do, thankfully, for him. And now he's actually on the run. He might be able to get out of this one. And I believe that he will. There's no way for LM to try to ult in there by himself. So Rascal finally getting so much map pressure done here. LM out of position now and trying to help. And the Baron is started for Gen G.
Yeah, they need to respond so quickly. They did not want to trade this for a Cloud Soul. But it looks like with Gen G backing off of it here, just from Faker's rotation over and the lack of vision. Look at the lack of vision here for Gen G around this Drake. They're not sure if T1 is rushing over to the Baron or not at that moment, so they make the call to back off early. So actually this works out really well for T1. Had Gen G had a little bit more vision there, then they might have actually pushed the Baron and traded the Baron for the Cloud Soul and put themselves in a position to where they maybe could push this back. They had the bot inhibitor down now, would have had control of all the lanes during that Baron buff. But as it turns out, with no vision there, you know, T1 are able to get this really, really lucky situation back for them. Because that could have been one of those terrible trades that you take. I mean, if it's a different soul, maybe it ends up being okay. But the Cloud Soul here for a Baron, if Gen G had gotten that, I think they'd be very happy with the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you imagine Rascal, who's, you know, 1v1000 at this point in time, right? He's basically all alone trying to win this game by himself. If he had Baron in the side lane, then how many people do you need to stop that? Is 2 enough? Can LM get over there and stop him with the Gragas? I mean, probably, especially with turret help on the Nexus, but, you know, how much map pressure is he going to be able to get? So they want to try to go for this Baron before Camille is too far in the base. Yeah, they do have a ton of damage here.
Very much a faster rotation this time from T1, much more decisive. And this is exactly the same thing. All right, we're going to see the teleport.
All right. This time, we do have the teleport coming in. It's going to be Zoe. Faker gets the Baron here as the Rel will move in, but fighting front to back with Gumayusi is such a good play here for T1. He is shredding through every single player on the side of Gen G. There is no hope for anyone to survive against that fountain laser that is Gumayusi right now. He is now 5-0, and they take a huge team fight here, and I'm not sure with Rascal down that Gen G have any recourse.
I mean, he's about to Flame Horizon Ruler here. And talk about how great he's done so far against tough opponents. He's laned against Ghost, he's laned against Deft, now he's laned against Ruler. He has outclassed him in lane. I think a lot more priority for Gen G needs to be on the bot side of the map and controlling this insane duo of Gumayusi and Keria. As you mentioned, I don't think there's any way surviving this for Gen G. The Baron buff, the push to end the game here now as T1 finally get to be decisive and make that Baron play.
Yeah, Kana not even here. He's like, all right, thank you, team. You know, better top lane wins, huh? We'll see if this counter engage can actually work. They're going to take out Gumayusi, maybe going a little bit too close to the turrets, as now Faker is just going to run away with his tail between his legs, not able to do it all alone here, as Gen G do actually stay alive in this game somehow, some way. Gumayusi getting a little bit too close to the sun, and will be taken out.
Well, we're going to see a very similar situation occurring here, as this is actually such an incredible fight, too. You mentioned, you called Gumayusi the fountain laser damage output here. The stun is onto life, and just look at his health bar disappear. Ruler gets pushed back. He obviously doesn't have any survivability. Kana using his damage build to blow up a single target. You talked about it early on. You know, in some of these later team fights, he basically can just kill someone by himself. This is where you're going to see the push in here to end the game. It's Bales, though. See a really nice defensive engage. Life crash down into the stun. Going to instantly get a kill there. And Ruler on the flank takes down a second. And that's going to be just LM. Well, maybe I could turn on the Nexus. Not going to happen. Now, this next fight, Valdez, I mean, we're going to see another, like, we're going to see part 3. Maybe this is Revenge of the Rascal. In part 3 of what will be another objective fight with Rascal side laning and trying to return to the team fight just in time. Should have teleport available for this Elder Drake fight. can see already BDD is pushing top, and I think that is probably where he's going to go. The inhibitor is open bot, but that's also where the Elder Drake is, so you can't really side lane that one. It's just too risky. It's really easy for T1 to defend. So it's unfortunate that's the objective. That is going to be up here soon, because it's obviously much better to have it on the opposite side of the map. That was the perfect situation for him split pushing into the base last time. You could see he's already rushing towards the top. That BDD just set up for him. But in the interim, T1 are not going to play safe. They're not going to play passive and just kind of sit around and push mid like they have been so much. They're actually going to look for an inhibitor. And this is going to force a reaction out of Gen G.
And importantly, it's the lane where their inhibitor is down. So it takes some pressure away from the split pushing of Rascal in the side lane. They say, well, I dare you to split push against 5 of us. You're not going to be able to. Fighting front to back, if Gumi is ever protected, I think T1 win 100% of the time. And as long as, you know, they don't get poked out by, oh man, huge damage from the cast coming in here. Rascal desperately trying to get into the back line. But again, Gumayusi is protected. Another fantastic hook onto Clid, as there is no room for him. They're all just going to have to try to run away here. BDD trying to do it alone, nearly takes out Faker, but that Nexus is so low they could probably just click on it at this point in time. Gumayusi still protected in the back. He is just one-shotting people now, as Ruler desperately trying to make it happen. Gumayusi going to wait here for the kill, picks up the triple kill, and picks up the game. And man, what a dominant performance there from the side of T1. Gumayusi coming out here and making another statement as if he needed to make any more.
I mean, what a photo finish, not in terms of how close the ending was there, but in terms of the state of the final fight. It's actually Gumayusi who starts the lead, gets the turret plates early, is able to push that advantage across all lanes, control objectives, and basically be the fountain laser you called him earlier on the Aphelios. But in the later parts of the game, it's him who actually gets the clean up there. It's he who cleans up the kill that allows the Nexus to go down, and Gumayusi is definitely going to be considered one of the most hyped young rookies coming into LCK 2021 right now. He was hyped going into the Worlds qualifiers, of course. A lot of people are talking about his Draven, but I think, again, priority has to be given towards his bot lane right now. You cannot let Aphelios Thresh go through for T1 right now with how well he's playing it, how well he is controlling that lane, and then the rest of the map that comes with it. Control for Faker as well in the mid lane gave them so many more opportunities early on to actually keep the map under their control. I gotta vote for my Pog, so take it away.
You know, I think that T1 have just done a fantastic job moving into 2021 because they have enabled their rookies to have a spot here in the LCK, and they pick up Keria, who has just been such a huge enabler for Gumayusi in these games. This bottom duo might currently be the best in the LCK, and I'm not even scared to call that one early. It kind of feels obvious, just seeing what he was able to do against Dalmon Kia, seeing what they were able to do in Game 1 here against Gen G. They look unstoppable, and I think you're hitting it right on the money. If they just let them get whatever matchup they want and priority in the bottom lane, Gumayusi and Keria are never going to let go of that in these games.
Yeah.
So a lot of thinking to do moving into Game 2 in terms of drafting and how they're going to shut down this huge bottom lane duo.
Yeah, and the idea is to lean into your strengths, right, for Gen G. That's why they committed to the early Camille pick. That's why they leaned towards Rascal, who's been their best performing player, I think most would argue, based on their 4-0 start to the LCK. But I was skeptical at first in the draft, and when we started to see the game play out, it looked like he was doing well against Kana there in the top lane. It just wasn't enough, though, and the bot lane the game ran away from Gen G down there. So I do think we're going to have a lot of discussion about this as we head into the second draft phase. Just look at the damage output, 10,000 damage. The leader is Gumayusi here, and you could also see Kana on this pick in the top lane. It was a safe pick against the Camille. He ended up doing way more damage, being super relevant in late game team fights as well, something that Camille unfortunately is just simply not able to do.
The damage output as a team from the side of T1, pretty insane across the board that time around. We saw later on in the game that the Nidalee not really able to do too much. Ruler never really able to get into the back line, and even with all the items that he eventually built up, he was not able to get a team fight on his terms. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Gen G handle this moving into game number 2. They are going to switch sides. It should change things in the draft, maybe open up some extra bans for Gen G. on that blue side. But of course, guys, we are going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to continue with this awesome series of Gen G up against T1. So make sure you guys are tuning in, telling your friends this is going on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, game number 2.
나 점수할게 천천히. 쌈봐 돼. 카메 나한테 봐. 야 카메 조냐 있어. 카메 조냐. 카메 잡았어. 정면 좋아. 카이사 필. 카이사 필. 서처럼. 아 싸움 맞아. 싸움 맞아. 끝내자. 다 잡았다. 끝내. 미안하다. 끝내가.
야, 좀 잡을게요.
나이스.
죽지만 않으면 어떻게든 파밍은 됩니다.
그러니까 우리 하나 입장에서 때리다가 만화가 부족하거든요.
네. 이거 지금 거의 다 버리고
집에도
갑니다. 와, 짤킬! 세트도 오고 카이사는 저기 달려오고 있어요.
라스칼이 좀 단단하거든요.
라스칼이 시간 끌어주면
많이 단단해요.
네. 본이부터
카이사 와요. 카이사 뚜루루루루루루. 예, 그냥 녹았고요.
아니 뒤에서만 나타난 카이사가
카이사가 없는 상황. 카이사가 그냥 레넥톤 포지션이에요.
예.
카이사가 레넥톤처럼
트리플 별로 안 돌아옵니다. 키를 다 먹어지고 젠지 에이스.
네, 그냥 쓸어버리죠.
예, 툭하면 에이스입니다.
일단 근데 이게 나오는 과정에서
연결 나가고 다시 파괴적인 메타파괴. 이거 에이스 뜨나요? 와서가
잡혔고
모건도 에이스입니다. 모건 전차 T1
자 지인이 밀고 들어갈 수 있죠.
뒤쪽 플라이가
정면. 그런데
근데 솔카이 공격대로 바로 뒤에.
오, 잘 도망가는데요? 신게 또 그래도 어떻게든 좀 살리려고. 와, 아니
킹게! 야, 킹게! 와, 이걸 도망가요!
저기서 배가 틀어지나요? 방금 그 각에서?
야! 배를 내밀면서 허리를 튼 것 같은 느낌이 있었어요.
그렇죠.
킵니까? 어떡합니까?
이거 버스타고 치명 가면 치명. 그러니까 놔줄 수 없죠. 잡아서 엔딩부터 녹이자. 요네 대박 나긴 했는데 마무리가 안 되거든요. 이렇게 되면 트리플킬인데 시와 펜타킬 구마유시 펜타킬. 근데 약간 늦어요. 페리 리치. 너무 잘 들어갔어요. 다음에 안쪽에서 툭툭 밀고 나가면 뒤에 나름 대박이요. 잡힐 것 같고요. 칸나 선수. 상대가 장로의 힘이 있습니다. 네. 그래서 페리는 잡았는데 그렇게 나름 최선을 다가 아직 없거든요. 장로 프레스 칸이 잡고 싸움을 잘하고 있습니다. 장로의 힘으로. 장로의 힘으로. 프레스. 빨리 라인 클리어 하면서 뒤에 온도. 근데 구마유시가 약간 들어와봐 좀 이런 느낌.
We had the biggest match of the week, T1 versus Genji, and T1 was able to shut down Genji with a very solid performance. And today's analyst desk will be joined by Gorilla and Curl and also Jung and Lee. Welcome to the desk, everybody. And we are having a clash between the top teams here in the LCK, and T1 was able to break the nexus of Genji. So without the name cards, actually, well, Kuro and Gorilla agreed that T1 had the better comp. Without the name cards of the players, T1 had definitely edge over Genji. And take a look at the bans here. The reason for the Olaf bans because is about the early game weakness of Pantheon. And also, when the Pantheon gets banned down, Echo can be a counter pick into Azir, so maybe that is the reason why they also banned down Echo here. And also, T1 was really smart, giving Gragas over to Kana because Seth and Gragas was one of the top champions that Life can utilize in the bottom lane. Genji took away Syndra, and because T1 saw Genji was not picking in the Gragas, they were able to take it away from Life. And Aphelios and Thresh is, well, Kai'Sa is a champion that requires a really nice partners, for example, like Seth or Gragas, but Aphelios and Thresh was able to exert a lot of power up against Kai'Sa paired up with Rel. Now let's take a look at the highlights where Syndra started to lose her priority. So Syndra got onto the fight with her teleport on her way down to the mid lane. She suddenly makes a shift down to the bottom lane just to burn her flash, and they were not able to gain any kind of points with this engagement. At the same time, let's take a look at the mid lane here and the CS department. Zoe was able to get lane priority from now on, and you know, up until this point, actually Syndra was having a huge priority and she was winning the lane, but that engagement on the bottom lane was not working well for Genji, and they were hasting too much to make that decision, so this investment went to nowhere for Genji. And T1, they had the winning matchup down on the bottom lane, Aphelios and Thresh, and they were able to maximize the snowball. So the answer to this bottom lane was actually Camille in the top lane from Genji. So T1 made a decision that they cannot stop Camille down on the bottom lane, so they started off the Baron. And Aphelios, you know, this champion is really good at bursting down the Baron with the right armors. So they wanted to call Camille in and group up for a 5 versus 5 fight because they had a very fed Aphelios. And you know, when they are going for a Baron and there's a potential Baron still, you know, junglers and laners cast burst damage all together like 3-2-1 and go. And you know, we saw a nice defense coming out from T1, securing the Baron away from Italy. We can say this is not a desperation Baron, it is more like a T1 making the right decision at the right timing because they were well aware of the situation about their side lane and their potential for team fights. Now let's take a look at the player of the game on the side of T1. It's gonna be Gumayusi. And Aphelios. We can kind of say they were actually playing around Gumayusi, and also they were kind of playing and also making a draft around him, and Gumayusi answered back really well with his performance. And T1's bottom duo, they are really good at this kind of aggressive play, and also Aphelios and Thresh are the best kind of duo to maximize their color. Gumayusi was doing a fantastic job, but at the same time, he got so many support from Pantheon, Thresh, and also Zoe. So great mechanics, great teamwork on the side of Gumayusi and also T1. Gumayusi really prefers to play on the front line, so he has the perfect teamwork to kind of support him. Gumayusi picked up 9 votes out of 9 unanimous POG going over to his pocket. And we were a little bit flustered to see him picking up the first POG, but now it's time to move on to game number 2 between T1 and Genji, and let's find out whether Genji can keep their winning streak or whether T1 can take them down once again.
Thank you, G-Sun, for that wonderful translation of the analyst desk as we are moving our way into game number 2. I want to point out that even though Gumayusi got 9 out of 9, shout out to Keria. We shouted him out multiple times during the game, but he just was able to open up so much space for Gumayusi, a fantastic support. I feel like the perfect addition to T1's roster here moving into 2021.
Yeah, I mean, he empowers this new player so much, and they are not drafting against him. Gen G are not, at least not at the moment. It's tough, right? You know, you try to ban away the Aphelios, they might prioritize the Samira. We've seen Samira Rel, we've seen the Samira with Maokai even, for T1 in that bot duo find success. So this draft, as we head into it for game number 2, I think we're going to have to see a lot bigger priority on controlling the bot side for Gen G. They are on blue side, which means they also give over a duo to T1 in their first rotation. So that means that, you know, if you leave that open, okay, we see the Samira ban at least, so I appreciate that. We've already changed things up a little bit, but if you leave the, you know, Thresh Aphelios open, I think T1 take it 100% in this first rotation. So you've got to take either a first pick Aphelios if you're not going to ban it, or I think you have to ban it. Because I think even the earlier pick on the Pantheon was actually what helped empower that. You leave the Pantheon there. If you let T1 take the Pantheon, if you want to take something else, then maybe at least it's not as strong as of a funnel, and they are going to respect it. Thank you, Gen G.
A lot of respect being shown to the bottom lane here of T1. Kai'Sa taken away by T1. They do not want to let Ruler get a lane that he's been loving with the Kai'Sa down in the bottom side. Now, with 380 carries removed, do they go ahead and prioritize a Jhin pick? Ruler, the only player to win on Jhin so far in the LCK.
Yep.
Kalista would be interesting. We don't see her too much anymore. And they might just go ahead and first pick it, which again, something we used to talk about a lot, kind of holds you into a certain kind of composition, one that can be very aggressive, leaning from the bottom side. And let's see how T1 respond to this first pick.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see this end up being a flex pick. As with all the ADs locked up, we're seeing both teams just make sure they can get one that they'd like to play here. This would be Gumayusi's first time on the Ezreal in a professional match, but they look towards the Jhin instead. And that's going to be locked in here. Has been paired with Alistar for the bot duo of Gumayusi and Keria for T1 so far. So might be something they just go ahead and grab here early, sort of flex that third pick as a response to what Gen G brings in. Alternatively, you can grab a strong jungle pick, and they are actually going to highlight that Pantheon here. And this is going to make their bot lane be able to play so much more aggressively on red side. With Jhin, you can poke a lot, you can be aggressive, you can try to get that early lead in the lane. And then if they decide to all in here, you see a rotation in from something like an Olaf or a Nidalee, then you once again have that LM defensive ult available. And we see that lock in on the Olaf. And the Renekton pick for Rascal once again.
Yeah, the Renekton and the Olaf here with the Kalista is like, okay, guys, we're just going to 100% be looking for 5v5 team fights where we just try to run down your backline. They're going to try to get on top of Gumayusi, not give him any room to breathe. And Faker says, well, you know, it's really good against that.
Yeah.
Is a Emperor's Divide. Now, generally good. Olaf can kind of handle that as long as he's got Ragnarok up at the time. Would have to run around the wall after, but also Renekton can kind of zoom over it. But I like the fact that Faker gets onto a comfort pick that can disengage when you already see Gen G's composition face up.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right. I mean, not only does he get to play a champion he likes in the lane, but it's been what they've been looking for to set up team fights and splitting the team in half. Even if you have Ragnarok out as Clid, that actually can sometimes put you away from your team when the Emperor Divide comes out. You're actually suddenly by yourself and have to retreat yourself, even though you didn't get pushed back by it. You're on your way out as soon as you can. As soon as you're at 1/3 health instantly, as everyone targets you down. See the Echo ban and the Zoe ban here, so limiting what BDD can play into this. And with the style of really aggressive team fighting that we're seeing here for Gen G, I would really like to see the Orianna committed to for BDD. A strong pick for mid lane, very safe, So we do see the Thresh ban come through. I also wouldn't mind, to be honest, something we've seen, again, it's pretty rare, but something we've seen from Lehens and Bang with Jhin is the Seraphine pick, and I think it actually works out pretty well with the Jhin if you want to be aggressive in lane and try to control the game around the bot side. Again, this is a very different draft, this is a very different composition where you're not worried about insane topside control early on, based on the priority we saw to Camille last game, so might not be what they're looking for necessarily, but there must be a reason they're saving this pick for last here.
Yeah, pretty interesting to see. Again, kind of similar thing we saw from Genji, looking to prioritize picks rather than go for counter picks on the red side with their Camille and Syndra picks that they did the last time. And we have Jarvan. Jarvan support.
Yeah.
This is is that Spirit? Like, who is playing support right now for the side of Genji? Support Jarvan is something we have not seen in a long time, and when it was played, it was AP. You go for the stopwatch early, you look to poke with your flags, and of course you have fantastic engage, and you're kind of just like a suicide cataclysm bot. But very interesting picks coming out here from Genji.
This is really, really interesting. It feels like it's a pick that's designed to be very frustrating to deal with in the lane, be oppressive, make it so that Gumusi can't actually snowball the lane. You know, Faker versus Syndra in the mid lane shouldn't be a lane where he gets insane priority like he did last game. So there's a lot of ways to really limit the effectiveness of what can be a scary early snowball. Also, Jhin, not a champion that's going to snowball the same way that the Aphelios that he played previously will. The Gragas is a safe matchup for the Renekton, but this is really about team fighting for T1, and Jarvan's ultimate is going to disrupt a lot of that as well. This is going to be such an interesting game that we're about to watch. This draft feels very much even across the board from what I'm seeing here. I mean, you can see T1 drafting for comfort, drafting around safety, whereas Genji are hyper aggressive, and so far in the series they've won, they look really good when they are the ones setting the tempo.
Well, I mean, we'll see how this early game goes, because if Genji fall behind with this kind of a roster, not sure what to say. You're going to be dealing with intense amounts of poke, disengage, and if you get behind, I think it's pretty much GG from there. T1 will be looking to hold on, and I love the Alistar last pick. It says, you know, we're going to have perfect disengage for anybody who dares try to engage onto the Jhin. And yeah, it's interesting that they saved that counter pick as well for the support side, just to take a look at what else Genji were going to bring alongside of what was a very obvious kind of a composition already. So it looks like we're ready to jump into game number 2, guys. Let's go back onto the Rift for Genji versus T1.
Yeah, you know, it feels like they sniffed it out, right, that there was going to be a weird pick. And they wanted to make sure they had something that would feel safe against it. Just to see the very early information granted here. Or
An
like,
airy here. On the Jarvan, it's going to be that kind of AP support Jarvan. He didn't take the stopwatch, which is, I believe, what we used to see from Spirit when he was flexing Jarvan support AP. But still similar idea.
Yeah.
With the rune choice, at least.
Yeah, the Speltheus Edge coming in as well, and right now this is LM just getting kind of shoved away at the moment. Will change his jungle pathing as a result. And for Faker in this matchup, I'm really curious to see how he does against BDD's Syndra. You know, he's already laned against Showmaker, obviously, on this Azir. See how BDD ends up performing. Mentioned it on Genji's opening day matchup, but everyone is saying right now that he is terrifying in scrims. A lot of people are saying he is definitely one of the mid laners to watch out for right now. And I just excited to see a matchup where maybe he actually gets the upper hand early on, because last game Faker had such control that it was really, really difficult.
Yeah, very true. I'm just laughing because of the airy Jarvan looking to poke out Gumusi right from the get-go. Definitely, okay, misses there. Definitely something that can offer you some early game poke against a lane with the Jhin against the Kalista, which should do pretty well with that range advantage. See big trades here in the mid lane. Faker's got to be careful, looking to try to force out that flash, but Faker very calmly just going to sidestep the orb as level 2 hit here first down in the bottom side. This looking to get on top of Gumayusi now with the ignite. The flash comes in and life is just going to get first blood onto Gumayusi. And say what you will about support Jarvan, but it just got first blood onto a really strong player.
Yeah, onto the player who dominated last game. It's been 275 days. It's actually, Cario played it versus Effort there against the set, actually, last time it was played. So now he has to play against it. And, you know, it is going to be very frustrating to deal with in lane, and I think that there was not the proper respect shown there, especially with the Eri that you mentioned earlier. You can use both, you know, aggressively and defensively when Jarvan pops his E. And I do like how Faker is playing this mid matchup, just using his range and trying to sidestep Qs. It's been fairly even so far. So a little mild caster curse as he does get hit by the stun.
Yeah, I mean, if there's going to be a player that's confident in the mid lane, it is going to be Faker. And nice little bait coming in here from Kana. He's looking to turn the tables from game number 1. Rascal is going to get that double slice and dice away, and he's still got flash available, but he doesn't use it and gets engaged upon by the flash from the Pantheon. And so Rascal thinking that he had enough range, but he gets punished for it.
Yeah. And he got over the wall, actually, before he got stunned, which is really important. If that had actually, if he had been stunned beforehand, he wouldn't be able to get out that way. But I guess maybe that's what made him feel like he was safe, but he certainly was not. So this is actually a, you know, early kill over to the Pantheon. And once again, we're seeing Kana with a pretty stable Gragas pick here in the top side. So we're going to watch this fight again. Look at the damage output here for life. Splashes in. Early on in the game, even at level 1, by the way.
Yeah, it's level 1 to level 2.
Yeah. This just feels great for Kana, that LM has been such a great supportive Pantheon. In terms of stopping dives, now on the top side, previously, obviously, in the bot lane was where he was able to make a lot of those defensive engages happen. And post 6, as we've talked about so much, that's when he's going to be able to really, from a long range, assist both the top and bot lanes equally well. So we always have to talk about Faker's win rate on the Azir. It's, you know, one of the champions he's most famous for, if not, I mean, literally the champion he's most famous for. And so many targeted bans across multiple different metas on this champion. Even when Azir is not meta, sometimes Faker makes it work. And it's such a terrifying thing to think about when you've got so many other priority picks to think about in it.
Yeah, it's his most played. He's definitely quite good on the pick as well. When you play that many games and you still have an insane win rate. The bottom lane pressure now is really getting out of control. Gumayusi with that early death. Struggling to even farm underneath the turret. You take a look, even an ability tone picked up by Life early on. He's not messing around with this poke, and Gumayusi is really feeling the hurt down here. And even may have to back once again on this cannon wave, but down 20 CS already. Bot cryo means that Clid takes the Mountain Drake early, which is going to be even more fantastic. And yeah, things looking up here on the side of Gen G.
It's super good for Jarvan as well to get a little bit of extra, you know, armor there as well. And I have to say, right now it feels like, in a lot of ways, we have a very reverse situation to what we saw a lot of what happened in the last game, where, you know, T1 had control over objectives, had lane priority, were crushing it, despite the failed teleports we saw from BDD on the Syndra. But in this case, you know, despite Kana getting that extra support in the top lane, it has been domination in the bot lane. We have the tables turned here as the sides flip. So for T1 right now, the next few fights are going to be around objectives, and they need to make sure they don't find themselves too far behind before that happens. The next Drake is Infernal, so we could even have another Cloud Soul. Certainly possible. But, yeah, I mean, this feels like a game that, you know, is... You mentioned it earlier, it's not going to be a great late game comp for Gen G, so they need to get ahead early, they need to have a tempo advantage, and so far, I mean, this is working exactly as intended. Even Demolish taken for Rascal, he's going to get the turret plate.
Yeah, just, you know, having the Olaf up in the top side means that Kana now has to respect it. They do not need the Olaf down in the bottom side just yet. So that frees him up to pressure some of the other lanes, get some of those snowballs going. And you could see maybe looking to set something up on the Faker, but it is Azir with Flash, so good luck with that. As one thing about the AP Jarvan support is that the poke is nearly impossible to dodge. It is one of the most consistent abilities just for laying down poke. Because the flag is nearly instant,
Yeah.
It has a much bigger range than even you might imagine.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's just Jin's range is probably lower. I would say it's either the same or maybe slightly lower than the flag, which means that whenever he steps into the lane to try to do some DPS to the minions, he's gonna get poked without fail.
Yeah, he's already finished his Spell Thief's Edge, shocker. And I mean, the damage output is going to be quite high when we see that post-game graph later on in terms of the supports. And getting the first blood means, you know, he has obviously an advantage in terms of those items. Now, Gen.G making a play around this Rift Herald with the top prio they have right now. Faker did have control of mid, but they're just not able to contest this. In fact, actually, he did not have control of mid. That was just a rotation up from BDD, which is why they were able to make this happen. And I mean, this is, again, objective control across the board going to Gen.G. Feels like the reverse of what we saw in Game 1. And T1, I mean, this is not a terrible situation by any means. You know, one Drake, one Herald. CS deficit in the bot lane. Sure, these are issues, these are problems that can compound into a very serious deficit going into potentially Soul Point. Again, similar to last game. But the composition falls off big time in the late game for Gen.G, so as long as T1 doesn't get too far behind, this is definitely a game where T1 just scale up and don't take those early objective fights, don't take any unnecessary risks.
Yeah, and it's very important that you mention it because you would expect Gen.G's composition to get ahead. The one thing I do worry about is how far behind Gumayusi is getting. You talked about, you know, kind of you're on a clock, right? You're on a bit of a timer. If you are Gen.G, you want to try to end the game probably before 30 minutes or around 30 minutes. Don't want to let it go too much longer than that, but you get yourself more time as Gen.G the more you put behind some of those carries. Now, thankfully for T1, they do have Faker, who is doing pretty well in the mid lane. He's farming up quite nicely. He's only 4 CS behind, which isn't really a big deal, and so far hasn't seen much pressure, so at least that late game carry is doing pretty nicely so far.
Yeah.
Kana, this time around, he's going tank, so even if he does fall behind, it's not a huge deal in the world.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there is still a win condition for T1 later on in this game, but we will have to see how far Gen.G can push the issue, especially with the Drake pressure, the Rift Herald that they do have. I would imagine they would even try to drop that down in the bottom side, but let's see where Clid decides to put that Rift Herald in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be bot or mid, you'd have to think, and they're trying to clear up some vision here. The Scuttle is still going to be up here, so that's annoying to deal with, but the Drake has spawned now. And with the prio they have in mid and bot, and with Clid's really perfectly timed rotation around the Drake, looks like this is just simply going to go the way of Gen.G. LM is backing right now, so nowhere near the action. If this takes too long, though, I mean, they can collapse in with Pantheon's ult, and they do have vision with that Scuttle that we were talking about just moments before. And right now, you know, the lead is too big. The advantage is 30 CS up right now for Ruler. You know, at the top lane, see, Kana is really struggling in terms of that CS department as well. Farm lead goes to Khalid. But in terms of how these team fights happen, when we do get to see a 5v5 team fight, where T1 actually get to fight on their terms, where they're not just getting insanely owned by lane prio at the moment, that's when things can get scary. So for T1, they just ignore this Drake for now. There's just simply no reason to try to take a fight here that could cause them to find themselves further behind in these lanes, and we still are very much in a lane-dominated map of League of Legends.
Yeah, really the only opportunity I could see for T1 is if LM looks for, you know, a quick clap onto probably BDD. He does have his flash, but still a lot of pressure can be put on in there, and it ended up that BDD actually did have to back because he was reading the pressure from LM around that area. Now, the reason they're dropping this Rift Herald up top is because of the amount of damage they've already done to this turret. They want to get Rascal out of lane, but the TP is coming in already with the Pantheon, so T1 will look to turn this one around. 3v2 for now. We got Cinder coming up, but it might be too little too late. Under the turret, just gonna sweep them both up, and even though the turret does go down, that is 2 kills to the side of T1.
Yeah, I think it's a trade you definitely want to take if you're T1. You're very happy with how this went. It was very well reacted to as well, as kind of started to trade as the Rift Herald was dropped. So, a very nice trade back here. It shows the power of what this comp can do roaming-wise. With the Pantheon, you see a teleport, so essentially 2 teleports here, and it's look at where LM ults in. He actually goes very far to the left because he's like, oh, I know this turret's going down, but I am guaranteeing 2 kills. There's no way out. There's no retreat. The angle he takes there just makes it very clear that the objective is just to trade the turret for the kills, and that's what this Pantheon is going to allow you to do.
Uh-oh. That was very aggressive from BDD. I don't think you're ever looking for that kill. But again, at least Faker doesn't have a teleport to get back in a lane. But he's fine. He's still got 2 biscuits.
Yeah.
And you're using your flash when you are a Syndra that doesn't have much mobility against a Seer Pantheon. A very kind of over-aggressive maneuver there from BDD. He was never going to get that kill, as, oh man, Kana just barely not able to get away with that recall. Looks like he's probably dead, especially with BDD rotating up the river. Not even going to need him. He's just going to waste some more time here. Still alive, actually.
He dodged.
And if he runs this down, he might actually be able to get an execute.
Oh, it's going to be close.
Trying to bait that out. Wants to go
Sad.
up the side.
Sad cat. I think he's going to get the execute.
Yeah, I think he will.
Unbelievable. You know, the funny thing
Oh,
is,
man.
this is not the first time we've seen Kana get himself in a pretty rough spot, you know, in terms of this series. There were like 2 moments last game where we were like, maybe he doesn't want to be there, but he gets out. Okay, in this case, he doesn't die, or he doesn't get out. He dies, but at least it's an execute, so you'll take it.
No, it's great, you know. He did use his flash, but still able to deny some extra gold to this early to mid-game team.
Yeah.
That is, it's still going to be very valuable.
Speaking
He
of,
knows now he can just kind of sit back and farm.
yeah, speaking of, I mean, the gold leads here tell the story of everything we've been talking about in this early game. The massive leads on the Callista and the Renekton, as the early game is just massively in their favor. Even with the Pantheon pick, you know, it's not like, besides obviously that turret dive we had at the top where they, you know, they died as the turret went down. Besides that, it hasn't been over-aggressive dives from Rascal to where LM on this Pantheon could trade kills back like we saw in the previous game. So it just simply has been, this Pantheon pick has been very, very passive. As the laning phase is about pushing lanes, pushing CS, and pushing turrets, not about dive, not about getting kills. That's why Gen G is actually 1 kill to 3 at the moment, despite the lead they have at this tempo advantage.
Kana wants to get in and get out. We'll see if Rascal pushes the issue here. I think he just swiped every
minion.
217 gold. That was pretty satisfying. As Kana still looking to press the issue. He's getting tankier and tankier.
LM's here.
He has that Sunfire done. And so he knows that he can just step up to the Renekton and be pretty safe and not have to deal with that. Also has a tier build, so looking to build up some mana. It'll be interesting to see if he builds an item out of that tier.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be helpful in terms of how much sustain he has later on. You know, he is going to be dealing with some of the side lane that Rascal will be sort of relegated to as if we do get to later stages of this game. So it's always going to be helpful. Grog is pretty sustainable in general health-wise. Have extra mana will be nice. Being aggressive, getting those Sunfire stacks, trading like that, and getting out safe. You love to see it, knowing the Pantheon is there. Rascal is getting away with this top turret push, but T1 are trying to steal this Drake away. It looks like they just barely are not going to contest it. Life and Co. definitely considering it. And BDD does not have teleport, so I think that's the main reason why they don't actually commit.
Yeah, they just say, well, it's a Cloud Drake. We don't really care about that. We're going to get a lot of pressure done to your lanes anyway. As Kana kind of just throws his lane away. He got his one item, and he's like, okay, now time to group up my team. I think they were almost baiting Gen G into fighting there, knowing that they had the Gragas nearby, but I don't know. Teleport available on Rascal. there was a potential to try to turn that one for Gen G, but they decided against it, thinking the first Cloud Drake here not going to be worth it. But again, you know, it's about being on a timer, and you got to be careful if you are Gen G. Want to fight when you're strong and not let this game go too long.
Yeah, for sure. And that Drake is not as impactful as you mentioned, you know, the Cloud Drake, once again. Back-to-back on those. Not even casting with Atlas tonight, we get it.
I know. What's going on? It's a rainy day, I guess.
Rainy day.
Not that windy, though, which is interesting. Maybe it should have been an Ocean Drake. But either way.
Maybe we'll get one in the second series. As right now, I mean, for T1, this is a scary phase of the game where you really wish you could take a 5v4 or 5v3 fight with the hard engage you have and the rotating power that Pantheon's going to give you, where you can just suddenly turn a 3v3 into a 4v3, or even a 3v2 into a 4v2, where you really just collapse and get those kills early on, where you don't have that straight up 5v5 team fight, because later on you will have the opportunity to fight. But I'm looking at items here. The Immortal Shield blows up. So Faker misses it.
Oh man, that's going to be big. Faker now getting run down here, has to flash away. And that was really close. I mean, Ruler didn't even have to flash or heal. So Ruler reading the situation very well, saying, okay, you don't have enough range to actually close the distance here. Whereas Faker using that ultimate and his flash, but getting nothing for it, going to be pretty demoralizing. That would have been a really nice pick.
Yeah.
To try to keep T1 in the game.
I mean, that's the kind of option you're looking for, is just trying to find somebody. As LM caught and knocked up here. He's Pantheon, though.
Have that, yeah, he's got the shield, so no damage actually comes through. But again, you're opening up space to take yet another turret. So that's 4 turrets down now, actually. The outers on all 3 lanes and the inner up on the top side means that already a nice chunk of gold extra going into the pockets of Gen G.
Yeah, I mean, with Baron coming up in 1 minute, I think there's a real argument to make for Gen G trying to attempt an early Baron here in this game, especially if they have control over the side lane, which I think is definitely going to be the case. Kana tries for the early trade here, and we're just going to see how this matchup goes in the vacuum. Can be very much just about the minions and nobody wants to fight, but if the issue is pushed and Rascal decides to start being more aggressive, then that could start to be an issue as well, where they can get a little bit more control on the map. But I think trying to force a Baron fight early on for Gen G, having the fight on their terms when they have this big lead right now. Runen's Hurricane just finished for Ruler. As you can see, Gumuji's still sitting on long swords after his Gale Force. There's a big advantage that Gen G have right now in terms of their items. And I wonder if, this Baron is maybe the way that Gen G just kind of makes sure their lead is not it just can't be, there's no comeback, right? They just lock it up with an early Baron, maybe even get some early inhibitors, then the map just belongs to them for the rest of the game. And look at the vision clearing that they have here around the Baron right now as I'm talking about it. I feel like this is a fight they're trying to look for.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something you have to consider if you are T1, as Keria is going to be the guy that checks for his team, decides to flash instead of using his ultimate there. Said, I'm in the Cataclysm here, I don't want to be locked up for too long. And, talking about Baron damage speed, one thing that we haven't mentioned actually with the support Jarvan is the attack speed on the flag.
Yeah.
You're maxing it, you're doing a lot of damage and poke, but actually if you're underneath the Baron and you just lay down a flag, you're giving attack speed to the Olaf, Renekton, and the Kalista.
Yeah.
So you're just shredding through that Baron, and you have the extra smite damage with the Rend of the Kalista, and it's definitely something that T1 have to have on their mind.
Yeah.
Because if you snowball this into getting the Baron and winning a team fight, Gen G could just win the game from there. So this game definitely on a knife's edge right now for the next, 7, 8 minutes.
Teleport.
See how T1 will react to it.
Teleport forced here, and this is
Rascal looking for Rascal.
Yeah,
they knew he was over here. They want to isolate him. That's a fantastic slow already. Gumayusi a little bit alone over here. He's going to Gale Force on top of Rascal, keep his distance. They want to fight it front to back, as Rascal does take a bunch of damage, but T1 a little bit too scared to get in there. They have that Azir turret to be let down as Tons of damage being poked out onto Rascal, and Gen.G say they do not want to engage onto this just yet. Combo here onto the Renekton, who's losing health, has to flash away. Opening up now is Gumayusi, and Gen.G say we want to just disengage. Faker going very aggressive. Olaf just standing up to him and taking the fight, but Keria in the backline creating a lot of space for his team. But I don't know if they have the damage here. This is looking way too good for Gen.G as T1 overextend into the team fight, and Gen.G will eventually stand up to them. Triple kill going the way of Olaf as they take a massive team fight.
Massive team fight. This is the team fight they were looking for. They forced control of the... They forced, actually, first of all, Kana to be relevant in mid. He actually came down to be mid because it looked like they might try to force a Baron fight. They had that cleared out, right? And that's where I was talking about Rascal getting value in the side lane. So he was off on the side during all of that. And you watch the mini-map here. Okay, we're actually zooming into the fight a little bit earlier, but he was off on the side here trying to force this fight. The reaction that T1 has is a common one, right? It's a pretty smart reaction. Okay, we can't let Rascal out here farming for free. He's actually very overextended. But they're so far ahead that he's so survivable. The rotation speed over for Gen.G, which is their plan all along, is very, very quick. And at this moment, it feels like if you paused it there, it'd feel like, okay, well, T1's got this fight. How did they lose this? But the Ragnarok, you talked about it, he stands right up to Faker. The Emperor's Divide is just not going to hit anybody. Golden Life and Klid is up there at the front. Meanwhile, the front-to-back that's happening with the very, very far ahead front of T1 is just going to mean that this fight goes Gen.G's way, and Faker's just not able to do anything that he was looking for there in that fight. The Ragnarok perfect there from Klid. And just an overextension that felt like at that moment T1 said, okay, this is our fight. This is our chance to come back in this game. But it was just a trap fight, right? This is exactly what Gen.G wanted. They wanted to fight during their power spike. They forced that fight by sending Rascal to the side.
That's exactly right. And you know, it's hard. That's why we said this game is on a knife's edge, because it's hard not to take that bait. It's hard to say, okay, this looks like a fantastic place to engage and maybe catch someone out. But at the same time, I think sitting back and not fighting is the answer, as we have talked about so much, because now they get the team fight on their terms when their power spike hits. Gen.G, they get the Baron, and now they're almost 10,000 gold ahead. So this might just be that insurmountable lead that they were looking to get here in the mid-game because of that one team fight, and very well played by them to do so, as now they're just pushing the entire map here. They've got a 1-3-1 going, able to send BDD into a solo lane as well, and pressure with the other three here in the mid lane with the Renekton up to the top side.
Yeah, you're just
yeah,
you're just so safe to even have BDD here. He gets cast as I say it, but look at where life is right now. He's actually going to turn it back. He almost is able to trade that back as Ellen comes over. But yeah, I mean, the pushing power that you have with Baron makes it so hard to even all in someone like BDD, even though he tried. Kana did there. It's not successful. It was actually a pretty cool near kill there to watch. But sadly, they don't get the kill, and the push continues, and it's a Baron buff push. Now, can they push an inhibitor here? That's the big question. With the advantage they have, I think they certainly can.
Yeah, I mean, they've still got 15 minutes on the Baron. They get the knock up here onto the Pantheon. They CC him from 100 to 0, so no shield comes out, and no survivability for LM, who has not been able to be as proactive on the Pantheon in this game. As now going on in, Faker going to try to separate the Renekton, but he just gets separated himself. As Gen.G looking to push the issue here. They want to win the game right here, right now. Gumayusi in the Cataclysm, no escape for him, as Keria is going to be run down by Ruler, who is incredibly strong right now. Nicely done by Kana to pick off the Olaf at least. But with the Max coming in here, actually going to be denied. He's got TP. They want to continue to push the issue here with 8 seconds on the Baron.
Really close. Going to push the issue for sure. I mean, look at the damage output of Ruler. He's crushing these turrets.
Oh, stun now onto Keria. He is absolutely dead. They trade it back for the Jarvan, but with full health now onto Ruler. He's just looking to take out the turrets. Another kill onto the Pantheon here, as they do have to back away. Look at Kana desperately trying to clear out these waves. He's still on the run, trying to buy some time for his team. And it looks like he may have just done it. Ruler is going to have to back away. Of course, Kana will lose his life, but it is a good sacrifice just to try to stay in this game.
Crazy.
Now pushing forward, he's moving in. He's got that Ren set onto many members, and with the stun coming in, does he have the damage? He has to go into that stopwatch. Here comes Rascal trying to buy themselves some time, as it will be a trade of kills. Gumayusi incredibly low, but he is still going to stay alive just barely. He's got the minions on him. Uh-oh, he's going to die to the minions.
Oh, Rascal.
And that might mean that Rascal can push in.
Yeah, he certainly is going to try for it. Problem is, Pantheon's going to ult in, and I think they might have overstayed their welcome here, Valdez. It's still very close. The minions, there's just so many.
LM is like, I don't know if I can actually go in on this. I gotta be careful. He's desperately trying to clear out these minions. I don't think they have enough auto attack damage onto the Nexus is the problem. Litho is coming on in. Kana back into the game. LM still stays alive. As trying to get in there is Keria. He's not able to get the kill. And that means that also Kana not able to do enough here. And with only LM alive, I think that finally Gen.G have been able to push in and secure the victory here. Game over is called by LM, and that will be the case. We are going to a game number 3 in this series. 2
amazing T1 series leading into this week. The first one against Hanwha Life, the second one obviously against Damwon Kia, and now the third hype matchup that they face off against Gen.G and ends up being a fantastic third game as well. Such an early advantage that they pushed the issue on so hard. I mean, you couldn't have pushed the issue further. Everyone's low on hit points, and they want to end the game. No doubt, no hesitation on the side of Gen.G as they push to finish the game. And what's another fiery finish between these two teams. And this is a textbook example. This is the example to look at. I mean, teams will study this game as to how to take an early lead and to force those advantages into more advantages, control Drake fights, even using a side laner like Rascal on the Renekton to force a team fight that's unfavorable for T1. And he pushed the envelope so far that it looked so tempting to take that fight, which is really where things started to close out for Gen.G when T1 could not win that fight. Faker had some failed Emperor's Divides in this game, that attempted one to kill BDD in mid. Obviously that one later on in the fight I was just talking about, where you had the Ragnarok up and you saw the really aggressive push through there when Faker had to stopwatch. There was a lot of ways that the game could have gone differently, and I don't want to blame Faker at all here, but it was just that kind of lead that makes every single fight you're trying to take, every single play you're trying to make, every even pick you're looking for on T1's side so difficult to execute. You're playing the game on the hardest mode at the highest level. It's the most difficult defense to execute.
It really was, and I think it required a little bit more passivity than we saw out of T1, but props to Gen.G for making that composition work. We saw that kind of comp be forced by a lot of teams in 2020 and kind of fall flat on its face, whereas I think that Gen.G executed it very nicely there. The Azir pick, you know, I mentioned it in pick ban. It's like, okay, yes, it's a pick that can disengage, but when you're up against that Olaf and Jarvan, are you going to be able to stop them from getting into your backline? And the answer was no in the end. So I love the way that the series is developing. I think it's only fitting that we get a game 3 for a series of this nature between these two awesome teams. And I'll be really curious to see how the pick ban switches up going into this last one, with T1 going back to the blue side, and how it develops from here. You know, do you give respect to the Jarvan this time? What do you try to ban away? And do Gen.G try to force the same kind of composition that worked for them in game 2?
And it's so crazy when you see weird picks like this dominate, because it really shakes up the pick and bans, you know? Especially when you have someone like Faker playing Azir, which is very out of the meta. As we take a look at our post-game stats here, I talked about it when we were watching it happen, but look at the support damage difference. You can see so much impact out of Life in this game, and he got that first blood. He did so much to impact a lot of those team fight setups, including the one that we saw at the very, very end there to close out the game. BDD having a much better time in this matchup against Faker. I talked about it from the get-go. Like, how does this game look when you have mid-priority? How much can Pantheon really do around the map? And the answer was not a whole lot, sadly. So really well executed by Gen.G here. I'm very excited for a third game.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see who is going to get the jump in that game number 3. But guys, we are going to go to another quick break. When we come back, the final game of this best of 3. Don't go anywhere.
아 천천히 봐줘.
손 막았어.
아지를 존냐 있다.
가줄래?
진풀 없어 진풀 없어 진풀 없어 진풀 없다 신 아직 노플
물러 매듭보기.
가줄래?
아직 노플
아 제발. 그거.
아직 노플
뺄래 그냥 뺄래.
신 아직 노플
애들 용 1분이다.
그냥 뺄래.
아 죽었어 왜 죽었어.
뭐야?
오케이.
왜 죽었어?
더해.
아직 노플 나 가는 중
발배 좋은 있다. 메테오다.
예, 풀이 가는 중.
채울거 사올게라.
궁 바렸다. 우리 가는 중. 우리 봐. 우리가 아직 나오기 전에 있다.
그냥 계속 싸워 그래. 나왔어.
나 가는 중.
불안났다.
나왔다. 나 월석이야.
괴물레퍼 죽여버려 그냥.
그냥 계속 싸워. 그냥 계속 싸워.
어이구. 노플 들어 노플.
야 이게 뭔 게임이냐? GG.
나이스. 한판 이깁시다.
네.
Genji is presenting us the game number 3 with the biggest series of the week, and they were able to bite back T1 with an improved performance in game 2, and we had a fierce competition coming in during the laning phase on the bottom lane. And we saw a very interesting one this time around. As a bottom laner, part of the bottom laner, I was paying attention to the draft. What kind of champions will be going down to the bottom lane? Genji banned out Samira and Ophelia, some of them successful picks that Gumayushi has been piloting. So, T1 also banned out Kai'Sa, one of the top tier AD carry champion as well. And the answer from Genji was Kai'Sa, one of Ruler's signature pick. And also T1 took Gragas, but Life still has another answer, J4. And we had a new comp called Kalista and Zarvan, and they were able to do a lot of work starting from the laning phase. Genji also banned out Twisted Fate away from T1, especially from Faker. So I think both teams were able to get their favorite comp, and T1 had Azir in their pocket. And Echo is a really tricky pick into Azir, so they kept banning away Echo. So I think, speaking of the pick and bans, I think both teams got the best answer possible on their board. This time around, Olaf was the counterpart of Pantheon, and let's take a look how Genji tried to snowball based on their Herald. However, T1 was able to answer back really well. So Faker had a really nice lane control here, so Syndra had to back and reset. So they kind of forced TP out of BDD, which means Faker had the lane and also the TP priority. But at this moment, even though Genji had this information, well, Clid was actually rushing to the top lane to pop his Herald. Maybe this is a communication issue coming out from Genji, because Genji also had a lot of time left with their Herald's Eye. So this was more of a failed dive attempt, and also the first turret attempt coming out from Genji, and T1 was able to trade back with multiple kills. This is definitely a mistake coming out from Genji, and T1 was really sharp on making a punishment. Genji was hasting a little bit at that early point of the game, maybe because they were in a huge lead. But if they have not made that mistake, Genji might have finished the game even at the earlier minute mark of the game. Now let's take a look at the second highlight that we prepared. So T1 had this information that Renekton was hiding in that brush, and T1 was able to spot him, and they wanted to punish his overextension. Renekton was able to juggle some of the aggro from the opponents, but with the Azir's turret, it was actually a good fight for T1. Syndra and Kalista was too far away, so T1 was in favor of this position, but they went all in too early, so they were not able to seal the deal. And Olaf has a massive sustainability with his item build, so he was able to actually kill Azir and walk out alive. Azir cannot do much damage up against the tank champions, so in this kind of extended team fight, T1 was not able to actually, show the power of their burst damage. Genji was able to even out the series to this game number 2 victory, and the POG on the side of Genji will be Life on J4. A very well earned POG over to Life. J4 was doing so much work in the beginning. I mean, it is obvious for Alistar to go in as soon as he hits level 2 first, but, Life never looked so flustered. He was so calm answering back with his burst damage coming out from Airy. And this time as well, J4 was really sharp, making that Cataclysm onto Azir and keeping him in a very short range. And a very clean CC engage with Kalista. We can see how much proficiency he's got on this champion. It's been so long since we saw this J4 pick on the support role, but you know, Gen.G looks so ready for this. You know, a lot of people actually make mistake when they kind of get to play a champion that they have not been playing for a long time. But Gorilla voted for Rascal. A bit of a surprise over here because Rascal was also doing a fantastic work up against Gragas for 2 games in a row. He has been a solid pillar for Gen.G. Now let's move on to the series deciding game between T1 and Gen.G. I'm gonna pass it back to our casters.
Thank you so much, G-Sun, for the wonderful translation, once again, of the analyst desk, as we are moving into our 3rd and final game of the best of 3. T1 getting snuffed out there in game 2, a very aggressive early game, kind of map pressure composition from Gen.G was very well played, and T1 were not able to stop that, so Gen.G getting the last win, but we switch back to the same sides as game 1. And I think this pick ban is going to dictate a lot of what could happen in this last game.
I mean, the games have essentially been decided by draft. Game 1, I think you could argue, of the 2, was the one that was closer. You know, the draft didn't just decide it outright. But in Game 2, the way they executed the draft that they picked just gave them such an early lead that they just kept winning every fight. And T1 made some really wrong decisions, especially that one we had on the right side of the map there in the tri-brush where everybody committed in. Just some bad decisions to fight when they were too far behind instead of trying to scale up, which you could see even when you look at that defense attempt of the Nexus, right? Like, they were not so far behind at that stage where it was like unwinnable if they had maybe just a few fewer items on the side of Gen.G. If they had just played a little bit safer, there might have been some potential team fights in those later Drakes and Baron fights, but no longer in the present. That's in the past as we head into this 3rd game. Once again, the priority has to be for Gen.G on the bot lane for T1. Even though last game Life had a pretty unique Jarvan pick, we saw the domination there that led to a completely open map. BDD crushed Faker in mid, so they had mid prio as well. I think you can't forget about game number 1 just because you had a successful bot lane in game 2, and part of the reason why you had that successful bot lane is because you banned away some of that control. So I think once again we are going to have to see that, but we're not, at least not on the outset here with the Taliyah ban coming through here with TF.
And we see another Echo ban here for T1. Notice that they go for the Renekton and Olaf bans as well. They do not want to face against that composition again. And the Echo, you know, I was mentioning Syndra before, but I think this is actually to potentially open up Azir for Faker. He doesn't want to deal with BDD's Echo. And I think we have the same bans here on the side of Gen.G, so lots of smiles and good hopes here on the side of T1 because they know that, you know, they've got it again.
I've seen this movie before, you know? It's got a really cool ending. It's very hype. You know, at the beginning of Act 2, you know, is when Gumayusi starts to pop off on the Aphelios Thresh that they are going to lock in. Not instantly this time because they want to think about what comes next if we do see any changes. But it feels like a foolish move. It feels like so aggressive for Gen.G to say, we can rewrite this story, actually. This is going to be the director's cut of the LM Faker bot lane story. But look, I mean, they do bring Ruler onto the Kalista once again. But I think they may be misunderstanding why the Kalista pick worked so well in the previous game. Because this is not going to be that abusive controlled lane, and we might even see a Jarvan ban here for T1, just to make sure they don't get to play that combo.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind it. I think you have a bit more control with the Aphelios Thresh, and you can negate some of that damage, so maybe they decide not to, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind it when you struggled with this bot lane the last time around, but they banned Gragas, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's wacky.
Kana was the one who played Gragas twice in a row, so I guess they don't want to deal with Kalista Gragas.
Yeah.
And they do not want to have that 4th pick and give the counter pick to BDD in the mid lane. So trying to take away stuff that can go well with the Kalista right now.
Yeah. And this also means we'll have to see what Kana's weak side top is going to be. They took the Kennen away. And there's another support ban onto Life Set, which is arguably his strongest pick in recent memory on the support. But the question becomes now, what do we see for Kana in the top lane against this Camille? Will we see something crazy like Mordekaiser? Or will we see, you know, something like an Ornn, something very, very stable? Or will they take a risk and try to play the Gnar into this Camille? There's a lot of unusual champions being hovered there. The Seraphim wouldn't be a bad choice in the bot lane. Definitely remove a lot of that extra pressure that you're going to face.
I think they might go for something like a Galio. You know, you can take away so many tank supports that can go well with the Callista. Of course, throwing the Galio into a backline, and also its synergy with the Camille could be nice if you're looking for 5v5 team fights. But they're going to save that for last. So we get the same mid lane matchup, Zoe versus Syndra. Faker was feeling good about that in game number 1, especially with many failed teleports from BDD into the bottom side. Faker was able to get a lot of space for himself and a nice lead. But what are we rounding out this T1 composition with? What is Kana going to play into the top lane against Camille?
I'm really feeling something like a Mordekaiser here, Ornn, something that has great survivability under turret, something that's safe. And Jace ends up being the pick here, so a very unusual choice. You don't really see Jace counterpicked into the Camille in the top lane, and it can be a very, very skill-based matchup. Things can get crazy out of hand up there if one player gets ahead, but yeah, not the safe pick that I expected. It's going to help limit what Rascal can do, and can, you know, obviously you have the range advantage there, can make it difficult to snowball the lane. And there's the Jarvan.
All right, pretty interesting. You know, again, we were thinking maybe a Galio. I was thinking even an Alistar could have been looked out, but the Jarvan, he says, with the very hard engage in the mid stages of the game, is just going to be the pick. They want to have backline access for Gumayusi, and they want to do it with the Jarvan. So they go for that. The Jace, pretty interesting. You mentioned up into the Camille, a very skirmishy matchup there, but also it just adds insane amounts of poke to what they already have. They already have Zoe Aphelios, and if they get into the mid game ahead, T1's comp might just be able to shut down any hopes of Gen.G trying to hard engage.
Yeah, it could even be...
Very curious about that.
Could even be a bigger snowball than what we saw in the previous game, if that could even be believed. Like, if we could even conceptualize that. The advantages of the poke, the damage output this team has with an early lead, how safe this bot lane will be on paper with LM's Pantheon yet again. Very, very defensive options that you look for in both the top and bottom lane. When you have this Pantheon pick, LM's been fantastic on it so far. And we'll see how this mid lane matchup goes. Again, if Faker can actually get that edge once more, then suddenly this Jarvan pick doesn't seem like it could be as oppressive anymore. You can see a lot of roam from Faker early on into the bot lane, so very, very curious to see how this one goes. It does feel like, though, it's a very slightly different version of what we've already seen in Game 1.
Yep, does feel like that, so curious to see if Gen.G can make it a bit more competitive this time around. Or will T1 get ahead and push their poke onto Gen.G? We will find out who is going to take the win in this series here as we move on to the Rift for game number 3.
Very much a story of rookie versus master in the Gumayusi versus ruler matchup. We had domination in both games, obviously opposite of each other. And this is another game where Gen.G just don't ban away the bot side control. And in game 1, you know, could have made a lot of arguments for Rascal's Camille control early, the high priority they had on it. Could have, you know, and we did argue that, you know, maybe that's where they win this game, maybe that's where they get ahead, but it feels scary to think about what this bot lane is capable of. In this game, even though we know, and we are going to see a trade here, we know what Gumayusi is capable of and how terrifying this bot lane can become if given a huge lead. It's not the same matchup this time, right? Like, this time you have to deal with a much more aggressive Jarvan support pick, so this isn't going to be the same sort of runaway train bot lane that we had T1 find success with. And I don't think we're going to see failed teleports from BDD again, where he comes in to try to find a gank and then ends up being counter-ganked by the LM jungle teleport from Pantheon, his ult coming through. So I think the way this bot lane goes is going to be a lot closer than it was in game 1.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine. Obviously, Ruler has played his fair share of Callista, 25 and 10 on the pick. Already, we saw Ruler get a nice amount of poke onto Gumayusi before the fight, before the minions even hit the lane. And you've already got this very oppressive, annoying flag dropper guy who just keeps dropping it on top of your heads and is making this lane very annoying. You know, Thresh is technically the range support in this matchup, but he's got a lot less poke compared to Life, who's got a flag.
Yeah, even trying to get Thresh's souls is just pretty difficult at this stage. You can see how many of those he's going to try to pick up as you see him drop on the ground and how many he's denied. As, yeah, another comfort pick. You talk about comfort picks for T1, especially on Faker's Azir, is kind of been focused in on in terms of those kind of rarer picks. The Jace into the Camille, not a common one, but it is Kana's 10-2 record that we're looking at now. That reminds you that he is extremely well versed on the champion, and so far the lane matchup is going in his favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Kana has been impressing so far. I would imagine that he knows how to play this lane very well. Jace, obviously early on with the range and the amount of harass you can get, level 1, 2, 3, can be pretty annoying for Rascal on the Camille. It's the melee Camille. But, you know, as the lane comes along, as Camille gets a couple items, it's going to be Camille looking for hard engages, as we may have a bit of poke, a little bit of extra poke, some pressure, perhaps, onto the bottom side, but not even a spear thrown, as that would have been a nice amount of extra harass, I feel, for that bottom lane.
Yeah, he's just going to take the scuttle instead, it looks like. And, you know, the check here for LM, like, he actually went and got vision of the jungle, was able to scout all of this out first, so knew that Clid was not going to be in this part of the jungle, it was actually in bot side. And he gets the scuttle, but LM is here.
Here we go, flash on in, one combo, can they do it? The last auto is not enough, LM tries to tank it up, and we have the speed boost coming in now with the acceleration gate, and just barely. That was on a knife's edge, but they make the gank work in the end.
Yeah, good tank there from LM. Get him in there so he can get that last shot off the acceleration gate, as you mentioned, to catch up there. Very, very close, and actually started to feel like, you know, a little bit scary there for a second. Scary is just going to deny some Krugs here, sit under turret as Gumayusi heads back in to the teleport into the back into the lane here from Kana. Does go ahead and get serrated Dirk. So small edge here in the top lane, starting to feel like a bigger edge, starting to expand that lead early on, which is not what you want, again, with this Camille priority.
Yeah, and this is what you like to see out of the Pantheon. In game number 1, LM did show everybody what it means to have Matt presence as a jungle Pantheon, right? The counter gank timings were perfect. He was right on the right side of the map. He was there available to help out his team. But this time he's showing the other side of Pantheon, which is aggressive ganks. You can go under turret. It is a very consistent kind of gank with the targeted stun. And you do have, of course, the, you know, the execute damage that does come from this pick. Now, Kana doesn't have any summoner.
Yeah, he does not.
And the Camille, very consistent with the stun. Here it comes. The spear a little bit to the side there. But Kana, I believe, should still be run down here. We'll see if they do have the damage as the spear comes out. Clid should have this lead, and there it is. Clid picks up the kill for the second of the game.
Yeah, this is a really nice timing on this gank. The aggressive positioning that they had there in lane, that Kana had, with that advantage he had just gotten. And this is also right before LM hits 6. I think he hit 5, you know, just a few moments ago, so he's probably about halfway there now. So just barely getting that timing in so that there's no way to counter gank there. So really nice rotation from Clid around the top side of the map. And that's gonna, you know, really stabilize that lane that could have absolutely gotten out of control. But speaking of out of control, Aphelios push starting to look a little bit scary here in the bot lane, but there's no way to really force any turret plates or anything like that. It's not the same advantage as we had in game 1.
Still behind on CS. Nice, nice execute there from LM, making sure he picks up that objective. Hits level 6 first. has a decent lead in the jungle CS as well. And yeah, Kana's just going to be fine as long as he doesn't get too over-aggressive here. As we are going to take another look at this gank up in the top side.
Yeah, acceleration gate was used right before this for Kana, so it doesn't even have that. And even though the spear doesn't hit, there's just too much damage here. More importantly, what's happening in live BDD?
Just going to get flashed on, but the exhaust is there. They still have the damage as Ruler will pull his sticks out of Gumayusi. They do get that kill.
So much.
Gumayusi on level 5, and underneath the turret, BDD this time with a very effective gank.
Yeah, this gank is way more effective, and LM was not there. They had just seen him moments before, smiting away that Rift Scuttle, and he was obviously on the top side of the map finishing up that jungle, so they knew he wasn't going to be able to ult in for the counter gank. So this is a much better executed gank for BDB, but the timing and the vision they had of where LM was, or where he was likely to be unless he had brushed bot, which wouldn't make any sense, is really well executed, just based on map awareness. And meanwhile, Kana being very aggressive again. Klid is rotating back up, so see if we see once again.
This is rough for Kana. He's going to try to turn it onto Rascal. Here comes the Pantheon Light, desperately trying to get on in there with the Ignite, and he will pick up the kill, but LM did also take out his jungle opponent. And now we got a little bit of a 1-on-3 here. LM pushing the issue a little bit too far. BDD, though, with no ultimate. Going to take a little bit to take him down, but they do eventually pick up the kill as LM overextends a little bit there as he takes too much damage and goes down.
Yeah, the Pantheon ult, a little bit late, unfortunately, to make this into a really, really good trade or anything like that to try to save the top lane. As Kana's rotating back up there right away. Faker taking some of that farm for his troubles as he left lane. Will now head back mid, but gonna take a look at this fight again. Look at where Pantheon is right now. There's pings on him. They have vision on him on the minimap. Pings coming through. They know he is not in range to ult in to actually save this. So the go button is pressed. They go in. And unfortunately, Faker's just not there for the save. Faker actually has a wave that's pushing on his lane right now if you look at the minimap, because we know what happens in this exchange and in this fight. But he actually has to clear it first, or tries to, and he actually abandons it as he rotates up. So he's just so late here. So it ends up being a trade 1-for-1 here until BDD arrives. Faker is a little bit slow to the party. Owen gets stunned and is blown up here as Faker just has to back away. There's nothing he can do. He doesn't have any CC or burst he can do to save anybody. He's just too slow, frankly, on the draw. It's like Flash for some reason on cooldown.
Yeah. We saw zoom in there on the ward. Maybe he was clearing a ward and had to flash away. Not 100% sure about that one. But yeah, LM, you know, he needs to know that BDD can rotate up there faster. You mentioned the wave issue that was happening in the mid lane, so perhaps even a communication issue between him and Faker. Either way, it's going to be a nice little win in the fight there to Gen G, as they're also going to use that to have Light rotate up to the Rift Herald. They take that one down. And this time around, you know, there is another lead in the bottom side for this Kalista, but T1 is countering it with heavier leads in the jungle, and also, of course, the pressure that they've been pushing up on the top side. Look at this, 1,000 gold ahead right now for Kana, who's taken 2 plates and already also got that first blood earlier on.
So even though the ganks for Kana are good, and the trades are better for Gen G here to stop the pressure he is putting on, it's not enough. And the damage is done, as you mentioned. Pantheon roaming around the map because he isn't there for a lot of these ganks, because he's just been out of position. That's why Gen G have found these tiny windows where he's actually out of range. Not going to be the case here. He is here. Caster Blessing on this
flash. No flash this time for Keria.
Oh, the hook!
Okay, there we go. Hook is going to land, but we do have the Fate's Call coming in. Ruler looking to potentially counter-engage, but the sleep on the life, he throws himself in to the danger, but at least Gumayusi pretty out of position there in the blue pit. No escape for him, as the Lantern is going to be here this time around for LM. So it turns out to be a 1-for-1, but you know, that extra kill that goes on to Gumayusi, pretty nice.
Yeah.
At least T1 have Kana up in the top side.
I mean, that's what you trade for this. We are going to see a teleport coming through here for BDD. Wants to actually grab a kill, and he will be able to interrupt this.
Okay, well,
super low on
he's going to dodge both of those. Jace can be pretty rough to lock down, even with just the tier 1 boots that he has. So BDD not able to make that kill happen.
Yeah, BDD is unable to get the kill. Does use his teleport, but they are able to grab the Drake regardless with this extra pressure there in the top lane, and BDD is just going to get some extra minions. I was going to mention before this happened, one of the other leads that was really starting to become quite big was BDD's lead over Faker in the mid lane. Faker's late roams, so we're going to watch this fight again. Beautiful hook from Keria as the hook over the wall goes in, but a little bit of an overextension here. You see Gumayusi is caught in the pit, can't get out, and that's a trade that you'll take any day of the week if you're Gen G, because you want your bot laner to continue to get extra farm as he has. So support for AD always the way.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Keria used his Lantern on LM to try to create an angle where they go onto Ruler, but LM did not take it. He went on to Life instead, try to burst him down, so the Lantern was down. He could not save Gumayusi because of that cooldown usage. So a bit unfortunate, Keria looking for the, most opportunistic play, but LM just going for what was right in front of him. As they're going to be looking for a dive here. We got Pantheon looking for that angle. Rascal takes the right one. He is going to flash south away from the Pantheon with a flash over the wall. Exec Ultimatum looking to buy some time. Rascal getting that speed up. The trouble bubble is going to miss. But at the end of the day, still going to be the kill going the way of Ellen.
However, Ruler is going to get some extra plates here right before 14 minutes. Going to get the turret as well. Will be the first turret of the game. So question is it actually a good trade here? I mean, you want something if you're T1. You are able to find value. You are going to get the top plates, but you are making this Kalista so incredibly terrifying once again. So, it's hard to objectively say which one of these is better, in terms of the gold you're going to get here for Kana on this turret plus the kill. And you might argue it's better for T1, but the way that the gold is allowed to go into this really bad mismatch, the 80 carries, is a big problem, because we're not going to see that Gumayusi pop off Fountain Laser game here anymore. He just simply doesn't have enough farm. He's 1, 2, and 0. So, behind in terms of kills. At least he's going to try to trade back one plate before 14. Gets it.
Okay. Just barely able to scoop up some gold there in the 1v1 right before the Camille does join. So we'll take another look at this dive here, trying to cut off the angle, but Rascal does a good job of buying a lot of time.
Yeah, so much time he buys here. Camille is just so insanely mobile, very difficult to track down. Baker trying to get involved here as well. Even the red buff is getting involved.
Yeah. It's red buff. It's part of T1's team, of course.
Of course.
Flying the colors. And you were mentioning.
Just go ahead. I was just gonna say the red buff was a T1 fan since Pro League from StarCraft Brood War, but go ahead. That's all I was gonna say. It was not that important.
Very true. Adding to the conversation, I like it. But yeah, you were talking about which one of these objectives and carries that get ahead, which one of these are going to offer more to the team, like which one is objectively better. And if you look at the compositions, I kind of like T1's position here, because even though the Kalista is really fed, unless they get a super hard engage onto that backline, they're still going up against Jace and Zoe, which are very nicely fed, and are just going to be able to poke you out before these team fights happen. I feel like there's a lot more onus on Gen G to try to force fights and engages, and if they don't have it, it might not go their way. As we're looking to just burst down Rascal, LM, the Ninja Pantheon. They were not expecting that, and easily able to shut down the Camille once again for his third death. And just again, giving even more gold into the pockets of these hugely, the guys that are going to have huge poke damage as this game comes along in the mid game.
And again, without vision control for T1, or without positional advantages, it can be very difficult to get that poke off in some of these team fights, and you can get burst down if suddenly Jarvan finds that flank angle, gets a knock up, locks somebody into his crater. There are ways that T1 just doesn't get to play that team fight the way they want to. They don't get to have that poke, or somebody gets isolated and dies. But in a vacuum, especially as we're just still skirmishing around the map, you can just see how much T1 can do in terms of burst at range in a lot of these fights. And because Gumayusi, every time they do get an objective, does still do quite a lot on the Aphelios, can push turrets down very quickly, can push, hold that thought.
Keria getting the insta-cleanse, but he's got to be careful. You know, the Callista is incredibly strong, and if you're fighting into her, she is still going to shred you. So T1, as long as they keep themselves at range, they're going to have a fun time against the Callista. And not only the Callista, but even the Camille, Syndra. The Syndra loves having melee champions that dive on into you, and she can just kind of burst you down at range. But T1 have the range advantage on her as well. So even though BDD has a nice amount of farm in here, I feel like there might be some fights where he just desperately tries to press his R button and then maybe gets a little bit of poke, but not nearly as much as what T1 can do.
Sure. And, you know, T1, like I was saying before that fight, Gumayusi, he's behind, but he's only 30 CS behind, 1-2-0 versus 2-0. Yeah, he's significantly behind in the items as well. Ruin's Hurricane's done, because he's only got the Kraken Slayer. But he can catch up and farm pretty quickly because he's Aphelios, and, you know, I feel like that lead kind of starts to slowly... you know, it slowly becomes less and less significant over time unless T1 just get bowled over here, which they simply are not at the moment. So, very much a matchup that can start to skew back towards Gumayusi's favor. Not gonna see any pentakills, I don't think.
Not sure about this one. They get the flash out of Keria, but Fate's Call is used. And keep in mind, I mean, I guess there's no objective right now, so they should have it up for the next Drake fight, but... You want to have hard engage, you want to have tools to enable your engage, and you just lost a big one right there. Keria, though, I'm not sure about this. Hope he's got a stopwatch. Looks like he's got absolutely nothing, but still the burst damage coming out onto Clid is massive. Looking to turn it now onto Kana, who's kind of caught here all alone. The gameplay button out of the Syndra is going to just burst him down. Is going to immediately create that 4-on-3. You see Faker and Gumayusi trying to just shell at them from the backline, and Elam surviving for an incredibly long time. Low health bars here on the side of Gen.G. An incredibly close skirmish as Faker gonna get stunned down by BDD. In the backline here, 1v4 is eventually gonna get taken out, but at least he takes BDD with him. As at the end of the day, it looks like that one just barely goes into the hands of Gen.G.
Yeah, just barely. It was on a nice edge, Valdez. We go all the way back to the beginning here. Keria is in a really, really precarious spot. Does get the play away. And you can see the combo, everyone collapsed in onto life, but he did what he needed to do. He pushed back the 3 members of T1 on the left side, so we can see this collapse onto Kana. And Gen.G, if they can get on top of their targets, their damage output is really, really strong, as you mentioned with the Callista. Watch how much damage they're able to put in here super quickly. A lot of stopwatches end up getting burned. And for T1, they have to kite back. Their composition is all about range, but when Gen.G gets on top of you, there's just not a whole lot you can do. Ends up being a very closely traded back fight here as BDD goes down as well. But the fight does go the favor of Gen.G, and this is really nice for them because it shows that their composition works. It does work if you can execute it correctly. Even with life getting bursted down, he did his job. Was set up for that collapse there onto Kana, and functionally, yes, it does work, even with the poke that T1 has. So there's, I think, a lot of hope heading into a lot of these coming Drake fights right now for Gen.G, based on how that fight was successful. And it wasn't even the perfect engage for Gen.G. Things could have been a lot better, and if they get to fight on their terms, they certainly can take these upcoming fights.
Yep, that's the important thing, you know, on their terms. If they find targets right ahead of them, they're able to isolate them. They have an incredible amount of damage, and there are 2 carries that are very fed at this point in time. Even the Camille doesn't have any kills, fell extremely far behind on farm, but at least has finally been able to pick up a Trinity Force, so might be able to get some work done in the back lines of these fights. Obviously, diving onto Gumayusi is a big theme here for the side of Gen.G.
Yeah.
We want the Jarvan and the Camille to do exactly that. We'll see how effective they can be with that here. But yeah, I think T1 just kind of have to calm it down and try not to fight on Gen.G's terms. Try not to dive into that one.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
I think a lot of this is going to be based around vision control and how much you can set up around these objectives coming up very shortly. The other thing too is in the early game, in the early to mid game as well, Pantheon is great for counter ganks, can set up a lot of defensive fights in T1's favor. But now that their comp is really starting to just fight around poke and slow engages where eventually the Pantheon comes in, Pantheon doesn't feel so great anymore because, you know, when you're setting up stuff like this, you can't get isolated.
Oh boy.
You're the front line.
Yeah, he's got a shield, but that's not going to save him against 5 members. As okay, Faker, he's angry. That's going to set up the kill. Kana comes in, and that's that alley-oop that you can get sometimes with Jace Zoe. This is why we see this combination. They make it happen onto that weak support.
Yeah, this really nice follow-up from Faker. If Faker doesn't get that sleep, this is just a free kill for Gen G, and they walk out scot-free, but it does not happen that way. They still have advantage here in terms of positioning on this Drake, and T1 aren't able to collapse and fast enough, don't have vision control. You can see, look at all the deep wards too around the blue side jungle. This Rascal is gonna just have to sit up here very passively. Almost 100 CS down. Teleport coming in. Ooh, great lantern, goodbye.
You see a little bit in an awkward spot here, has to fight straight up against Ruler. Ruler, thankfully for Gumayusi, gets outnumbered and he has to back away. As Faker is beginning to flex a little bit. You saw that he was using some of those paddle stars in that fight in the river, but now he's getting angry. And this guy, he wants to try to carry a little bit. He knows that his poke damage is so key for winning these fights for his team.
And if he hits a sleep, he's going to land it no matter what. The sleeps can also carry his hooks to really disable somebody in the front line, Life in particular, if he does overextend. So watching this again, Pantheon has to try to check for vision, right? He's the only real front line that this team has. So every time he steps over the line like this, there's an opportunity for a pick for Gen G, and they come in like piranhas. The sleep for Faker allows Kana to get that alley-oop kill, as you called it, with the shock blast accelerated there. So, I mean, it looks really hype and it's really cool, but it's actually Faker who set that up. Without the sleep, that just simply isn't possible. But that's a lucky trade back for T1. They have to be careful about how LM is rotating around the map right now, because without him, there's no front to this team fight. There's no survivability, and they can't poke because eventually Gen G will just hard engage on top of them. The Fate's Call, Life's Crater, plus his knockups. Like, there's just a million ways that CC happens on Gen G's side, so you need that Pantheon frontline. So he cannot be overextending and picking, which means vision control goes to Gen G because they have a lot more tankiness to roam around the map and control the vision, whereas for T1 it's a lot harder.
I like the item choices here on the Callista as well. He's just going Shield Bow, he's got Bloodthirster, and he has the Renan's Hurricane. So it's all about getting into that fight, getting, auto-attacking as many people as possible, Ren setting into multiple enemies, and trying to survive as much as possible. The lifesteal is going to allow him to sustain against the poke and keep him a problem for T1. So Ruler trying to do his best, trying to itemize his best against what he's up against, and at 4-0-3 and the most farm in the game, he is absolutely the most key member on the lineup of Gen G.
I liked what you called it on one of the previous series you cast, the K-Ram stage of the game, where everybody's pushing mid and dealing with waves. T1's composition with all the poke that they have is insanely good when everyone's rotating around mid. They have so much siege damage, they have so much poke. So Gen G, even though they pushed the wave first, and I wanted to set up perhaps a fight around the brush, a few shock blasts come through, Faker hits some Qs, and then Gen G have to back off. See a rotation here towards the Baron. They have complete vision control of this. T1 do not know. And this has been a big problem. And if Pantheon goes to check vision, he might just die. So LM is scared to check, and they're just gonna sneak this Baron away, Valdez. Freebie.
Absolutely. He got all the Ren set he needs. The smite comes in, and now they're looking to turn it around, trying to get on top of that, but they gotta be careful about running straight into Gen G with the Baron buff. LM gets picked off, and they say, well, we can't fight this anymore. They're too strong right now. We cannot force a fight here. All we can do is try to poke, and even then, it's gonna be difficult to land. Okay, we got the sleep on for Callista, but
he doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care. It's going to be at full health in a jiffy.
Yep. Well, what an amazing play from Gen G. Just understanding that they've had so much better vision control of the top side of the map and of the Baron pit in particular. And it feels like for T1 you're in a catch-22 situation. As they realize what's happening, unfortunately just a little bit too late. But even if you knew the Baron is being taken, you have to fight into this very quickly because, you know, the clear time is very fast for T1 in this case. And so you're fighting into this without vision, you can't poke to engage, and then suddenly you get collapsed on. But it was a catch-22 problem because they couldn't even check for vision there without risking LM's life. Because he's the only one, like I said, who could really clear wards in this composition. At least safely, right? You know, Thresh doesn't have any way out himself if he goes in to try to deep ward clear. He's gonna have a big problem. You can even see it in the ward score. Look at how close the two of them are. And in fact, look at how further behind LM is than Clid, because he's just so scared to go into the jungle.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about itemization a little bit. One thing I haven't mentioned today is Moonstaff. Been paying attention to Twitter, don't worry. But I feel like this would have been a nice game for Clid to actually go into that on the Nidalee. He decides against it, just going for the quote-unquote standard Night Harvester. But, you know, having that sustain against the poke, I feel like would have been pretty nice alongside of it. Everybody else has tools. The sustain on the Callista, you get the Banshee's Veil on the Syndra. But I suppose not this game for Clid, it looks like. But either way, trying to push the issue here. Want to engage onto Kana as life nearly dies. But again, many tools for him to try to survive in these team fights. Has a Zhonya's himself.
Yeah, I actually really like what you're saying there. If you had the extra heals and the sustain, a lot of these situations where you're trying to slowly push in to end the game becomes so difficult, right? This is not the first time we've seen a game like this where the team has a pretty nice lead, but just it's so difficult to close out even with Baron buff because the enemy team has so much siege damage, so much poke. And for you to use your comp correctly to engage into their base is just almost impossible. Reminds me of that Afrika DRX game that you and I commentated last week that went supreme late game. We might be in for another one of those situations here, just because it's so difficult for Gen G to close out this game. It's unstoppable force versus immovable object type of situation with how these comps do collide in the late game. You can see that Gumayushi has actually caught up on CS quite significantly with all the lanes being pushed. He's been able to farm pretty nicely, and will finish his Infinity Edge now, so has been behind throughout a lot of this game, the early mid game, but he's a Felios, he catches up pretty quickly. So that's a lead that, you know, Ruler still has. He has 700 gold bounty, and did finish those items so quickly, the Ruins Hurricane and the Bloodthirster. But he's no longer, you know, leaps and bounds ahead, just leaps.
Very true. Certainly he does have a nice gold name. It's good to see, and T1 need that, because you talked about this potentially getting into a very late game stage. They need to have their Aphelios on 5 items, and to have the range advantage to be able to just poke people out in kind of 200 years, because that is one of their win conditions as this game does go along. Of course, Rascal is another guy who's looking to try to catch up, and he's going to be a huge menace as the game comes along. But, you know, the Jace is not going to be completely overrun, especially if he's just looking to defend a turret. I feel like he can do that,
yeah,
even in the later stages of the game. So, you know, I'm glad you mentioned it, because as long as this game moves along, the Callista eventually will lose power compared to the Aphelios, and we might get into a very close late game stage where T1 could potentially come back in this game.
Yeah.
Now, the Ocean Drake is pretty huge. I like the Ocean Soul here in this game for Gen G. It's just going to give them so much more sustain.
Yeah, I mean, it makes up for the fact that Italy did not build Moonstone here, so it's certainly going to be a big boon for them to deal with all the poke to heal that up. It's actually really a good thing that you mentioned, as we are going to see Keria be extremely aggressive here. Not going to find anything. This is actually really risky.
Oh,
no. Okay.
Clid, what is going on? Why are you there? That might just be the key that T1 needed. We're not going to see that hook land, but already 2 kills, and LM has found backline access. Now, he's alone, as Rascal is going to be alone as well. LM going to just try to survive. Will dodge his teammate's lantern and die. So, not going to be the case there. T1 got to be careful.
Gen G just have to buy time.
Miss.
They have to buy time here, because this is a fight they've lost. If they could buy a little bit more time and try to slow this down, maybe they can delay the Baron that T1 want to grab. But Kana teleports back, and he's got insane movement speed. He wants this. Spell shield deleted.
Well, Okay, only the Banshees failed. Nobody else able to catch up. Now we have Baron in 19 seconds, so T1 would have loved to get an extra pick, but I think because they couldn't get anyone else, they cannot start the Baron. So even though it was a nice pick by T1, Genji's still going to hold on here.
Really nice disengage considering the circumstances. Unfortunately, he should just not have been there. Clid should not have. When you have this much poke and insta burst on anyone who gets slept, when you don't have the comp set up to defend this, you can't be here. Life is taken out as a second casualty. LM comes over here to try to get the cutoff. BDD with a perfect stun to help slow this down. LM buys a lot of time there, but does end up going down the Syndrome, so that's another trade that means that they can't follow up for the Baron, as it has spawned now. And everyone's back up now for Gen.G, but T1, again, they have such an insane amount of siege. They're going to get mid-prio and try to rotate over for that Baron vision.
This is pretty much the biggest point in the game for both of these teams. It is such a key moment. We're going to have Shirley's blown there. Carrier's like, okay, I can't get caught, like what we've seen from some of the other players here earlier on. But this team fight could decide the entire game. I mean,
yeah, it
Gen.G
will,
take this, they get the Baron, and it removes so much of the wave clear from T1, and they could probably get double inhibitor and the Ocean Soul off the back. If T1 get this, this game extends, and Gumayusi is, you know, slowly but surely approaching that Fountain Laser status once again, and you can never count him out in the late game.
Yeah, with all the vision that Gen.G have right now, every time they step into some of these brushes or start heading towards Baron, T1 are quite literally taking shots in the dark to try to poke them down and chase them. Asleep does go off onto life here. So much burst damage, but he's going to survive. This could be the go button here. They're going in.
All right, LM is going to get engaged upon Life. The only one, a three-man play coming in from Carrier, but he gets burst down immediately as Life is going to engage. The double knockup with the flag and drag is massive, and now Gumayusi all alone trying to 200 years. He is not going to be able to. Gen.G, they find the engage that they were looking for. Life smurfs it so hard in this team fight, and they might just be able to push it in the game.
You know what I said earlier when I said, you look, this team fight they had on Drake way earlier, where I said it shows that functionally this team can fight. It's so difficult to execute. The CC they have is hard to actually pull off, but Life pulls it off in a phenomenal last minute, last hope fight here for Gen.G to close this one out early. Pulls it off here, and they are going to wipe T1 and close this series out. But what a phenomenal game played by both sides. Vision control, though, beautiful for Gen.G, executing this composition, getting an early lead, and fighting well around T1's poke, controlling where they were at every moment, not allowing T1 to find any roots back into the game by looking for those pokes over the wall. They did get that one pick onto Clid, but besides that, T1 was always on the defensive, and all it took was one team fight win in mid, one overextension, and that's when Life and the rest of his squad sweep up the kills and take this series away from T1.
I love the itemization. I love the way that Gen.G played that mid to late game against what T1 were bringing. They prepared for that exact moment. And as I said, that was going to be the game, essentially. Whoever was going to take that fight would probably end up winning the game. Now, it ended up being just a, 5v0 stomp in the fight, so Gen.G were just able to straight up win off the push. But let's take another look at the replay and break down how this fight even happened.
Yeah, Life goes super low health here, takes a ton of burst. They get the stun onto Pantheon, but Life is ready to go in. He knows that they're actually not that far away. The flay is big here for Carrier, but he's burst down, and now this is a fight that they just simply can't win, and they're on the they're on the wrong side of the map. As look, Life goes in, gets a big knock-up here on the flag drag, and Kana's burst down by the Syndra ult. Life survives throughout all of this, but that's exactly what they needed. But unfortunately, T1's on the wrong side of the mid lane. They can't get out. There's no retreat. They lost Carrier. There's no peel, and Life makes a super play. If that fight goes on longer and he doesn't get the double knockup, the poke eventually should win that fight for T1, but he is no fear, extreme confidence on this Jarvan pick. And we're suddenly starting to see some flair here in the LCK, especially with our top three teams on less meta champions, making big impacts and changing the games here and leading to those critical moments that give Gen.G this victory over T1 in what was a fantastic, very back and forth series.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much all we could have asked for, right? Gen G proving that, you know, it's not just the fact that they were stomping weaker teams, they can bring it to the stronger teams in the LCK as well. They take down T1 in 3 games, and as you mentioned, with some cool picks as well. Shout out to Ruler and Life, their duo chemistry there, the perfect timing on the Fade's call, knowing exactly when to re-engage. And, you know, as you mentioned it, we could have seen it 200 years. That fight could have turned out differently. But at the end of the day, Gen G just able to execute cleaner in the fight and also get a nice lead earlier on in that game as well.
Yeah.
To extend and, you know, itemize, to have the goal to itemize against what T1 were bringing and actually counter that out.
Yeah.
So, really awesome 3 games that we had there between those 2 teams.
Yeah, we even saw the Moonstone Renewer coming out for Life later on, so having a little bit more sustain. The Cloud Soul you were talking about would have been another thing that could have helped them survive against all that poke. I think my favorite moment of the game, as we are going to jump into highlights here, and it's going to be a long highlight reel going into this one,
Yeah.
very long game. But I think my favorite moment for the game was actually when they were able to take Baron for free because of the vision control they had. And what led to that was obviously the fact that at any moment, if LM stepped over the line alone, he would die. And he did die just moments before that, right? So he started playing a lot more passive after that. And Gen G controlling vision against a team that has so much poke, against a Zoe comp that has Jace as well, is so critical. We find a lot of teams getting ahead early, but then just ending up getting poked out in so many of those late game team fights because they don't have vision control. The team that has poke is just shooting orbs over the wall, right? Just paddling people down. And if you have vision control and T1 don't have the ability to chunk you down around these objectives, then you just simply can't fight the way your comp is supposed to. And when you try to go in and try to get that vision, try to get that information around these objectives, it's too late and your opponents are on top of you. So you just lose all control over the map. You know, when the vision is, the control is this good. I mean, look at all the words on the map throughout this highlight reel.
That's what allows you to just play on your terms, you know, and we talked about that being basically the win condition for Gen G. Now, Clid did get caught this one time, definitely a pretty big mistake, but Gen G were able to cleanly disengage, and he did so much elsewhere in the game, so I'm not really too, you know, bothered by it for Clid. We're gonna listen in to this last team fight.
저한테 볼게요 저희가.
가볼까? 딱 봐줄래?
나 걸 수 있어, 나 걸 수 있어.
Just yelling to go straight to the front. So he gets the yep, straight to the front to kill Felios there, and I mean, I'm in disbelief almost with how beautifully that was executed.
우리 바로 사용 한번 더 할까?
And spoiler alert, you know, I voted for Life again.
Coin,
He had a fantastic game, and he won that game for them at the end. You know, you can talk about all sorts of things that happened in the early game, the Callista control. That was partially, in fact, to Life. As you could take a look at the post-game stats here, and how much damage we did see in the bot lane for Ruler. But Life having that clutch moment that actually wins the game and closes it out in the Supreme late game, I mean, that's enough for me for Pog right there. Even if he had fed in the early game, I probably would have given it to him for making that one extremely good play at the very end.
Sometimes it comes down to just one super play, and I think it was the both of them once again, Ruler and Life, high-fiving there for the victory. They make it happen. Life with an unbelievable mechanical showing in that last fight with so much pressure on him. Not losing a beat, and, you know, you can try to ban out his set, you can try to take away the Gragas, other picks to go with that Callista, but Gen G said, okay, it wasn't just the fact that we had a very strong early game engage comp for game 2, it was just the control that we got in the bottom lane as well, and having that ability to be proactive and engage with Ruler and Life to kind of run the show. So they make it happen 2 games in a row. They absolutely deserve that win. And guess what? Next week, Gen G up against Damwon Kia. So we're going to get to see who is currently the #1 team in the LCK next week when they do face off.
Yeah, we get all 3 of the big matchups week after week after week. T1 versus Damwon last week. This week, T1 Gen G. Next week, Gen G, Damwon Kia. Gen G are going to take that first place spot away for now. But as you mentioned, the real test comes in that really, really tough matchup next week. Some revenge potentially for Gen G. They didn't make it to the World's Finals. They were taken out on their way there by G2. We never got to see what that could have looked like. But what we're going to see next week is where the top team in Korea lies.
Absolutely. So guys, I'm going to hand it over to Ji-sun as we go into the analyst desk and interview.
Thank you very much, guys. This is Ji-sun back with the analyst desk translation, and Genji was able to turn the series around and closed out the series with a phenomenal victory. Even though T1 locked in Aphelios and Thresh, they still had J4 to lock in. Well, J4 actually gets countered by the Lantern of Thresh, so it was really hard to expect that they're going to repeat the same comp, but Life's J4 was something different. And T1 added Jace to the top side, the Pantheon path from the bottom lane to the top lane, so they wanted to kind of boost the power of Jace. And however, Genji was able to execute better play in this game. T1 had poke comp. So poke comp, they have to scale well. And Jace was able to get fed up with the power of Pantheon, but they were not able to actually utilize their strength of poke damage in teamfights. Jace was having a lead in the laning phase up against Camille. So Camille was having a hard time in the early phase, but Clid came up with the perfect setup. So Pantheon had to the Raptor camp, but he got spotted by the ward of BDD. So he clears the camp over here, and on his way out, he once again gets spotted. So Genji had this information that he'll be rotating down to the Grump or the Wolf camp on the blue side. Clid all those visions on the side of blue team possible, and he had good reason to gank top. Jace also had good reason to kind of keep adding pressure, walking straight to the turret, but Clid find the perfectly timed gank to the top lane. It was very clear for Genji that Pantheon would be in a far proximity at that point of the game, and Jace could not accelerate his lead after that gank, so Camille was able to come back online as well. Genji also, at that point of the game, was able to shut down Jace with a lot of gold in his pocket, but at the same time, the true power of Genji was actually located on the downside of the map. So at this point of the game, well, Genji was able to force the flash out of Thresh, and Jace was on his way back to group up. And because Jace had so much priority in the side lanes, T1 wanted to open fights and force teamfight out of Genji, but the answer back from Genji was on point. Because they had their Thresh falling down first, Genji was able to outnumber the opponent, but Pantheon at the same time was able to show a huge amount of resistance at this fight, but he was not able to close out the kills. T1 was so close to turn this fight around, but at the same time, Genji was also showing off great mechanics. Ruler and Life was showing their power with the pocket pick, so let's check out who's gonna pick up the POG. And it's gonna be Life again, once again, back on the J4 pick for 2 games in a row. And Gorilla, as a professional player, knows the pride the player can feel after having a phenomenal game by himself. Perfect bag up from Life here. Meanwhile, Thresh was actually coming back from its base, and Ruler and Life was dominating the lane, so J4 was able to exert his control all around the map. And we had a fantastic combo coming out from J4. He went in with his ultimate, and he bought some time with his stopwatch and flag and drag and flash airborne 2 opponents. This is just